Hello, this is the Stories Beside channel. I release videos every day for you. Subscribe and click the bell. Robert cautiously peeked out of his hiding place to check. The wolf was still there. A wolf, or rather a police-sized beast capable of rivaling a cave-dwelling primitive creature. It hadn't gone anywhere and was carefree, rolling around in the freshly fallen snow, playing catch with its own tail and licking its rich coat. She seemed to demonstrate who was the true master of the situation here, and who was an unlucky little man, who by his stupidity, and as if as a punishment from the universe, got into such a story, which if you tell them, they won't believe and will call him a fantasist, an inventor, who just wants to distract normal people with scary stories. Robert sodding, because it was not to courage, but just very scary. I quietly closed the shutters of the window in the gatehouse and put the deadbolt back in place. He looked at the five, who shrewdly gave the last wood. There was, of course, still some simple furniture, so, theoretically, he wouldn't have to be cold for the next 24 hours. But the food was bad. The old woman, to all appearances, had not been used for the last years, so there was only what happened to be in her pocket, a chocolate nut bar. But even let it, having torn off the bar and its packaging, Robert greedily snatched a piece and started chewing vigorously. To save money, he saw no point in eating because he was about to risk everything by going outside. And there, if the wolf's offspring didn't catch him, he would soon reach human habitation because the village was at most an hour's walk away. If the wolf catches him, then it's foolish to think about anything at all. Then he won't need food anymore. How did I come to live like this? Robert asked aloud to himself, tearing the chocolate trace from his fingers. He didn't know the answer to that question, if only because just a couple of days ago, his life had been very ordinary and even peppery. However, this very peppercorn, which he decided to diversify his unsuccessful marriage of almost 10 years, and was, in fact, what led him to the present unenviable position. And if right now a good wizard appeared to Robert and offered to use a time machine to go back and fix everything, he would have agreed without a doubt. But the reality was that there were no good wizards around, and so the only thing to do was to live with what he had. If I live at all, Robert added aloud to his thoughts. Nervously, he giggled hysterically, because he really had no idea. How on earth would he ever get out of this whole thing now? When Robert had first married Wendy, he had belonged to that category of young people who believed that there was a place for true love, the kind of love that poets write poems about and fairy tales talk about. Robert was only 25 at the time, but the people around him called him unusually serious for his age, a young man who had not the wind in his head, but an organized plan. And that was actually true. Robert imagined his future in the style of finishing university and then living in a mansion. A successful businessman is happy with the woman he loves, and we have at least 4 children. What's there between uni and the life of a successful millionaire? He didn't have a very good idea and hoped that he would figure it out somehow. After all, life is such an amazing thing and always ready to throw up new opportunities and good luck. You just have to look at them and reach out. Yes, that's what he used to be. And now, when Robert looked back at his young self, he was so ashamed of it. Naive, self-righteous outrage. Nothing. Life will sort things out, Robert's grandmother often said. And as it soon turned out, life, or if you prefer, Mrs. Fate, either a higher power or a simple coincidence, but something Robert soon clicked on his nose and showed him his place, and not a prosperous man and future millionaire. And when that fall, or if you will, the slouching began. It seems, as Robert thought later, when relatives from all sides began to say enough, they said, "Stop putting money in other people's pockets for rent. Better take out a mortgage, you'll manage just fine." So he and Wendy decided to take out a mortgage. And when she was not yet a wife, but a bride, she did something for which Robert respected her for years. She gave up a wedding trip to a tropical island in order to save up for a down payment. Admittedly, after a few years, The topic was lost with the tropical vacation. Wendy often berated her husband. "Yeah, I do everything for you." She said it in almost every argument they had. "You're the reason I've never seen the sea in my life. What's the problem?" For the next years was to go. Sometimes Robert tried to object. "You could even go alone, by the way, but maybe it would be cheaper that way." And when he said that, his smart and generally calm ones, Wendy would start sniffling like an indignant and simultaneously frightened gopher. And then she'd offer one of three counterarguments. First, it's unseemly for spouses to vacation apart. 2, they need to save money. And it's stupid. Cut back on spending all year, then splurge. Thirdly, she wanted to go to the seaside properly. They are in a mood that snatches from fate long desired, which constantly eludes her. And then sometimes, just sometimes, in lieu of such counterarguments, Wendy would start crying ugly tears with a wet, slippery nose, a shuddering of the shoulders, and a rise in tone to a level that was perhaps glass-breaking and weeping. This was how she was received at moments when Robert, out of ordinary sympathy and desire for reconciliation, tried to come over and hug her. "Don't touch me," Wendy might have exclaimed then. And he didn't. And when not only in such, but in many other quarrels, she said that she did not want to see him. Robert, accordingly, could shut up or leave the house, no matter what the weather or the time of day. But in general, if there was an outside observer who would call Robert for a frank conversation, and on the condition of anonymity, would ask him to say how he assesses his marriage, whether he is happy, Robert would answer positively, because, in principle, he is used to thinking that he is fine. He and Wendy are not a bad couple. Not the ideal woman, yes. Has it changed since you were a bride? Only ideals are only in fairy tales. But ideals are only in fairy tales, aren't they? And he's a little old for fairy tales in his 30s. And in this relatively contented state of marriage, Robert stayed for about 6 years. And then it went downhill. Like an avalanche, it mushroomed underneath, everything in its path. And what was the root cause? A lot of things. And then one day, Robert packed his suitcase. The pretext for leaving home was an imaginary business trip. In fact, Robert was not going to a neighboring city, but to other latitudes, to the sea. "Really?" Christina asked him enthusiastically. "Are you serious? You're not joking." "Who would joke like that?" Robert grinned, warmly, looking at the woman, at whose feet he was now ready to put not only the trip, but also many things, because she had become everything to him lately. And that woman was Robert's lover. And actually, if someone had told him a year ago that he would cheat, he would have laughed in that person's face. But life had decided otherwise. And this decision to have a mistress Robert made even before he met Christina, who worked in their office as his subordinate. She was a senior cleaner, or to put it more culturally, the head of the service company Sunrise, which decided that its own cleaning service is more reliable and profitable than hiring it from the outside from time to time. Not a big bird in theory, but Robert, for one thing, wasn't the kind of man who recognizes the strictures of social status. In the second place, you're charming, funny, and not belligerent. Christina was in love, it seems, with the entire staff. And to her credit, it was worth saying that she behaved decently and kept her distance with everyone except Robert. He himself couldn't quite understand why they'd gotten so close. "You're the real deal," Christina once said. "You've got it written all over your face." "Really?" he hummed confusedly. "And what did you read there?" "That you're unhappy in your marriage, and when you call your wife at lunchtime every day, you look like a man who's forced to pull out a fireplace with his bare hands." Robert couldn't find anything to say in response, because Christina was right. Lately, he'd been having a hard time with the obligatory good son role, and he wasn't the only one who owed everyone. He owed his parents to help build a cottage, to visit regularly, to tell them about life with Wendy. And in principle, the first was normal, because Robert understood that rest in the fresh air is necessary for a modern man. But the fact that his mother wanted to know details about family life, and then instructed him that he did not behave that way with his wife, that he should, and so to say. It was tense, but there was no way to avoid it. Otherwise, Mom grabbed at the heart. The son had grown up. She said, sobbing, "V mother is no longer needed in the trash and on the garbage dump. So, son, don't you want to send me and my father to a nursing home?" Robert would get a kick out of it every time. If my father witnessed such a thing, he just rolled his eyes and grinned. "I've lived with her all my life, son," he said, and then he would try to calm his wife down. But Robert's mother was stubborn and knew how to take offense at the fact that someone did not obey her long and tastefully. Robert also owed a debt to the firm he worked for. However, it was understandable and natural. They give you money, you give them your professional skills. He was used to it. Everything was clear and normal here. And Robert owed Wendy, and he didn't realize it anymore, when he'd managed to become a debtor to her instead of a beloved husband. But lately she'd been going on and on about how tired she was of him getting up an hour early and rattling dishes while she made herself breakfast. From the way he pulls a blanket over her at night and coughs from what he sees as her dishwasher and multi-cook functions. They are women's favorites. That last one was actually funny and sad to the point of tears at the same time. "So let's divide up the chores," Robert suggested. "If you're tired, I'll help, of course." "I don't need anything else," Wendy replied. "I knew what I was getting into when I got married, but I thought you'd see me as a woman." Then Robert almost blurted out in reply that sometimes he saw in her, however, not the woman he loved, but the angry, a little hysterical, wild image. But of course he didn't say that and asked to clarify what was wrong. And it turned out that Wendy herself does not know. Gone is the romance. No more passion. And that's when he left home again, went to his parents' house. Only his father was there. Mom had gone to a distant relative. "You know, it's probably my fault. I opened up to my dad. I should have gone to more doctors to fix the problem. Maybe then she wouldn't have thought I was worthless." "You're not stupid," my father said. "You talk like that." The point was that Robert and Wendy had been unable to have a child throughout their marriage. And of course, they'd had a lot of tests that showed they were perfectly healthy. Doctors were throwing up their hands, and only one of them made a suggestion that it could be a matter of genetic incompatibility, but it's not accurate. And more research was needed. But Wendy adamantly refused. And when we got home from that last doctor, there was another scandal. And she said that maybe she couldn't get pregnant because she subconsciously felt insecure around Robert. "So should we get a divorce?" he asked. "Deef?" "No," replied Wendy. After a long silence, "I still love you. And I love you." "Hard as Glazunov," answered Robert, except that these magic words came so easily this time and somehow faded, as if he had said something banal, like "I love." "Blueberry jam." "Let's just live together," Wendy said then, looking into his eyes. "We're already married, aren't we?" Robert nodded silently, and they just went on living together. But that conversation had taken place almost 2 years ago, but it had been the starting point after which Robert had realized, deep down inside him, that something had cracked and fractured, and he would never be the same again. He tried to weigh everything judiciously. Should they really get a divorce? After all, just because a man and a woman got married didn't mean they had to live together all their lives. By default, this is a modern world, not a medieval one. But then he realized he really didn't want to break up with Wendy. Why not? If only because he's used to it. A family member. After all those years together. Yes, there were difficulties, but who doesn't have them? And then divorce is the need to divide the property, the apartment, for which the mortgage is paid, the car, which is also taken on credit. Divorce is a discord between relatives and friends who will take one side or the other. Divorce is pain. But who will guarantee that when they divorce, they will then meet people with whom they can create a better family than they had? There are no such guarantees, so Robert decides, well, they'll live together. And then maybe things would change. And then things did change, and he decided to cheat on his wife. The decision. It came unexpectedly, but mundanely, calmly. Just Robert suddenly heard colleagues talking about the fact that British scientists said that such a percentage of married couples cheat on each other. And Robert thought, what if his Wendy had had a lover for a long time? Maybe she does. And why wouldn't he find himself a woman? Take the edge off. No serious love, of course. But neither was living like this in a marriage that resembled breadcrumbs at the stage. Now he didn't have. He couldn't do it anymore. And then he turned his attention to Christina. They didn't start sleeping together right away. They just dated. You know, you're weird, Christina told him one day. It was summer, and they were walking in the park. And right now, they were up on a Ferris wheel to a height closer to where the birds fly. And I would have thought maybe even a maniac. Christina giggled. Why? Robert wondered. Because I read books about werewolves. That's sci-fi. Because you asked me out, but you've never kissed me, she said, like she meant it, but her eyes were warm and her lips were quivering. I was about to crack a smile. Or are you the kind of guy who doesn't need intimacy at all? It was strange, but Robert was embarrassed by the conversation. A grown man decides to have a mistress and is embarrassed when she talks about personal things. But isn't he stupid? But although he gave himself a mental smack, but outwardly held with a full sense of dignity. How can I be your mistress if there is nothing between us? Christina asked, looking him straight in the eye. And the wind brushed her blonde hair. But I can't call you a friend, answered at last. And then, one day we can have everything. One day, Christina grinned. What an amazing man you are. I like you for that, though. And now, she added with feigned courtly sternness, unless you want us to part when we go downstairs, just friends. Kiss me kissingly, vividly, and for real. Come on. And he kissed her, in a way that made her dizzy, and her breath rushed in a ridge of relaxed gold in his chest. And as they walked downstairs, stepping onto the ground, Robert realized he'd crossed the line. It wasn't just a dalliance anymore. He'd really cheated on his wife. And how disgusting it was, but at the same time cried inside a sweet feeling, as if with this vicious secret of his, he was paying Wendy in full for how cold, irritable, and uncomprehending she was. Yes, thought Robert, you've been ignoring me for too long, haven't you? Acting as if I were tied to you forever and had to listen to everything. What are you nagging me about? My wife. But it's not like that anymore. I'm free now, and I'll live my life as I choose. Our plane is preparing to make its final approach, so please fasten your seatbelts, and don't forget to look out the window. In front of you is the Pearl of the Seychelles, where an unforgettable vacation awaits you. The stewardess' sing-song speech of the charter flight that carried Robert and Christina to the resort came to an end, and many of the passengers clapped their hands. Just magical, Christina said once. Now that he was at a different point, Christina, he had no doubt whatsoever that he had made the right choice, flying to a vacation with Nancy, who was no longer the woman he had married long ago. It was a waste of money. As it is, he's not really committing anything that criminal. Yes, by accepted standards of morality, a man and a substitute for his wife is not a good man. But on the other hand, what about the fact that a wife can, over the years of marriage, literally push her spouse into it with her coldness, favor, and other flawed flaws? What is he a slave to her to suffer? No way in hell. That was Robert's thinking. As they walked down the airplane ramp, went through customs, and fished their luggage out of the belt. And he was also thinking that perhaps, and probably, this little love adventure would help him decide to get a divorce. Yes, indeed, it would be better that way. Otherwise, he and Nancy would continue to live like this, as if they were incomprehensible. Too bad for spouses, and not good enough for friends. And then, maybe by separating, they could finally be happy on their own. Maybe. Perhaps she will find a man to suit her, and they will be compatible in everything, including the ability to bear a child. And he, Robert, looked fondly at Christina, who was raving about the surrounding scenery, taking pictures, and licking exotic-flavored ice cream. Coconut cactus. Want some? She offered him one. But Robert shook his head. He wouldn't risk such savagery. But the fact that he had tasted adultery almost once before, he liked it very much. When her husband left on a business trip, Wendy closed the door behind him and breathed a sigh of relief to finally be alone. Not that she was tired. Though yes, she was tired. Walking to the hall and bedroom, she opened the shutters, letting sparks of frosty fresh air into the rooms. Finally, she could get some fresh air. My husband was always grumbling that it was blowing. Asked me to close it. And Wendy thought, no need for a hearty hot meal tonight. She'd have enough yogurt and cookies. And then, since it was her day off, she could occupy the TV all evening to watch her favorite show, and some silly show. Not that her husband forbids it, but definitely the grumbling grandmother reminded her, it's not the most intellectual vacation, and it would be better to watch this or that popular blogger who tell a story about space. Wendy only nodded and asked me not to try to bring her up anymore. Yeah, I'm not. Robert replied one day. I just want to get you interested in something. Why? She asked. Because people in a family should have common interests. Why? She repeated. A question, and with an unhealthy, as she herself realized, pleasure. Noticed that her husband began to get a little irritated. Yes, because when people live together, they should have something in common besides the payment of utility bills and the same bed, he added, suppressing 6 at the end, with the words that in this very bed, by the way, they have not had anything in the intimate plan for almost a year. But Robert didn't say that, because he didn't want to rudely insult the woman he had once loved with all his heart and still respected. In a way, you can just live together. Wendy shrugged and went back to watching her show. We're a bunch of people in one house in the countryside, where there wasn't a root vegetable garden though. Tried to play farm life and build love. You having been voted in periodically by the viewers. Robert wrinkled his nose. Personally, he thought his wife was watching nonsense, and perhaps that's why she had become like that. Or maybe one didn't depend on the other. And he was just a snob with a prejudiced opinion, mixed with a quiet as a spectacle in the depths of the volcano-cool, still lava dislike for the man he once loved. The bonds of affection for whom are now seen as chains, and the obligations of a close relationship as a burden. Previously, both parties. But be that as it may, Robert had not tried to instill his interests in Wendy for months, and was silent about how he himself spent his free time. Wendy only knew that he was fixing something there in the garage, helping a friend to collect old junk, proudly called retro car, and also goes to the rope park, where of course risked breaking his neck. Also, oh well, it's been done before anyway. Wendy was already used to taking her husband indifferently. It was better than worrying about them being estranged. Better to give each other freedom and just live side by side. Yes, it was possible. And Wendy had the example of her own parents in front of her. Molly and Sam had even divorced when Wendy was just a baby. But then, under pressure from relatives and realizing that their daughter needed a full family, they had come together. And even now, when she's grown up and left the nest, they're still together. Habit. Molly once explained the situation to her daughter. We just realized it was more peaceful. And you never regretted not finding love? Wendy asked. The conversation had taken place shortly before the wedding with Robert. Love grinned bitterly. Molly. What is it? Scientists say it's the hormones a person produces. But you and I are not teenagers to believe in that nonsense. Love can be a good thing at first to help you know what kind of person you want to be with. And then, when you've gotten used to it, you get used to it. It's okay if love passes, but there are still a lot of important things left to do. Even the most important things. Molly raised her finger emphatically. You know what I mean. The possessions that mutual friends have made together. The closeness in terms of having someone around to take care of you if anything. And you just live together because one person can't be close. And if you chase love, I'm sorry to be blunt, Like an animal, a man will love, fall out of love. And what? Split up. Destroyed the family. No, daughter, love is a fairy tale. It's a beautiful, brightly colored fruit, you know. But it's what's inside the fruit that counts. The flavor, cautiously suggested Wendy, who didn't quite get the gist of what her mother was telling her about vitamins. Molly grinned. You think? Carefully with squeamishness, said Wendy. Me and Robert might be the same way. I mean, one day we'll love each other. No one can predict, Molly replied. Otherwise, the world would be a trouble-free place. Hello. Yes, this is his wife. Wendy answered the phone from the office where her husband worked. 2 days after he left on a business trip, there was a pan frying turkey meatballs. Robert hated those, by the way. The husband did not understand how important it was to watch his health and demanded nightmarishly unhealthy cutlets with fatty pork and white bread. What do you mean it hurts? Oh, Wendy, no matter how their relationship went, but she did not show rigid indifference to her spouse. So he became alarmed when a colleague of Robert's began to inquire about his health. What do you mean? On sick leave. You sent him on a business trip, didn't you? Wendy sat down on a chair. A confused message was heard from the other side. And then Robert's colleague said that he knew that the man had said he was very sick, so he wouldn't be at work for 5 days. He would bring the certificates later, and he had not been sent on any business trip. We were afraid that there was an epidemic. A colleague chuckled nervously and explained that Christina had taken sick leave along with Robert. Wendy replied that no, her husband isn't home. He's gone in general, and she doesn't understand what's going on. The colleague from the other side hurriedly ended the conversation, only asking that as soon as Robert showed up, he was told that he was very much needed in the office, and an explanation for what the project at risk of disruption is also needed. From the kitchen came the distinct odor of fried food. It was time to take the cutlets off and send them off to finish cooking in the oven. But Wendy stood in the hall with the phone in her hand and frowned, trying to figure out what was going on. Then determinedly, she pressed the call to Robert's contact. Yes, he answered. What's wrong? I'm on the road. I told him not to bother you. Where are you? Wendy asked, and Robert was strangely silent. It seemed that in that silence, he knew what he knew. He'd been caught in a lie. Honey, I told you, the office called, said Wendy. You weren't sent on a business trip, Wendy, and I'll explain. Robert had taken the call as he stood on the quay and was now trying to find a quiet, secluded spot. There was a motley festival of local culture taking place on the island, and it was quite noisy. He was already regretting picking up the phone. Where are you? On a soap opera. Wendy, don't lie to me. Am I too young to tell you about my bare feet? Robert was bitten by some kind of insect. They said it's lice season on the island, and he wasn't expecting lice. The aggressive microphones made him very nervous and itchy. Why are you telling me with a Wendy? Gone somewhere. You what? What's that noise? There were girls and guys dancing around Robert who liked to palm their hands, a musical instrument like a drum. So you're in some kind of joint. Who do you think I am? Robert got mad. I don't drink at all. They're just dancers. Oh, that's what dancers are, girls. No, Wendy, you got it wrong. What's that noise out there? The hearing was terrible, but Wendy could make out something suspicious. You're at sea, Robert muttered. What are you? The kitchen no longer smelled very smoky from the kitchen. It was burning meat. You're at sea. You and your mistress have gone to a resort. The last one was spontaneous, and actually Wendy didn't believe it because it would be a ridiculous and idiotic platitude. I guessed, blurted out Robert, who was starting to get a little crazy from the scorching sun of the Marshak musicians who positively surrounded the tourist. Plus, this morning they'd been cheated out of money selling the Coral Reef tour. And although the loss was recovered thanks to the local police, the fallout remained. I'm off to the sea with my mistress, said Robert. What did you want me to do? Go on vacation with you? Does it hurt? I've had enough. We live worse than the neighbors. Why? I married you in the first place. You idiot. That you loved me. Smoke was coming from the kitchen besides the smell. Wendy was choking. Tears seemed to have accumulated in her whole being over the past years, but they couldn't find a way out. I loved you, she whispered, and she didn't end the call, just threw the phone hard into the wall. And the foam turned out to be very sturdy and didn't even crack. Nancy picked up the smartphone. Robert was breathing heavily. The artists realized that the tourists did not care about them, continued to move along the embankment. What have I done? The first thought flashed through my mind. It's her own fault. The second thought flashed. I should call her. Gnaw a question into her brain. No, let her cool off, and I'll do the same. And besides, Robert wiped his face clean of sweat. Now you have to think really hard about what to say, because it looks like he just destroyed his marriage. Wendy acted machine-like. She walked to the kitchen, took the skillet off the stove. You twisted the cold water faucet and stuck her dishes under the spray. The body finally gave in. Tears streamed down her face, and she felt a little better. Cheated, betrayed, heavy bells rang in my brain. Wendy went back into the hall after taking care of the frying pan. She lay down on the couch, curled up in a ball like a cat, and hugged the pillow, howled softly into it. It hurt. How can it hurt like that? Tearing something up inside if you're not physically ill. How can you want to fall through the ground, to dissolve into nothingness, and still be able to continue in your body? How could you love a person so much and hate them at the same time? She didn't catch that moment when she fell asleep, rather immersed in the heavy drama, the one her brain had sent her soul-suffering body into. And when Wendy opened her eyes, she realized it was 0 o'clock or evening still in the winter's early darkness. You can tell. The TV was still on. Wendy lost her eyes. The picture kept popping up. Must be because she cried a lot. Kevin, the Tega master, famous in his day, had finally returned to his students, the journalist said. The boy completely in a funny gray hat, tied ears. Behind the boy's back stretched the humblest-looking village. What's in store for us? Cheerfully, we will finish with a red nose. He asked the audience. Will Kevin have new followers, or will some of the old ones follow the teacher who has returned from almost 10 years of confinement in a psychiatric hospital? Unfortunately, continued the journalist, shifting from foot to foot, we did not manage to communicate with the hero of our story. He, as before, leads the life of a recluse, but we will try to keep you informed. And if you want to know more about the mysterious master of the Tega, then be sure to watch the documentary, which you can find online at the portal. Wendy frantically grabbed the remote and turned off the TV, her pleas cold sweat, and not from hysteria. It was just that now the past, which she thought was long buried, suddenly appeared to her. The airplane soared into the sky. Robert leaned back tiredly in his chair. The last couple of days, that is, the end of the little vacation in the Seychelles, had not been easy for him. And most importantly, he had ruined it all himself. After all, if only he hadn't answered his wife's call, he would have called her back later. For example, from the hotel room. Then, perhaps, it would have been possible to compose a true lie, and everything would have been fine. At least for those couple days. But Robert held back from ruining Christina's vacation and told her everything just before the return flight. So now she knows all about us, the young woman sighed. Your hands are icy cold, she said, drawn across the windowsill chair and wrapped her fingers around his palm. So we should get together and talk about everything. What? Robert, rounding my eyes. You want to meet my wife. Have you forgotten what we talked about? I squinted my eyes reproachfully. Christina, I told you from the beginning I don't want to spend a few years as a married man's mistress. We're trying to build a relationship together. And if all goes well, we reveal the whole truth. Divorce is all serious and honest. Yes, I remember, nodded Robert. They had that arrangement. And because of it, by the way, he had even more respect for Christina. A serious woman, not willing to torture the other side for years for nothing, making everyone live a lie. Except But technically, Robert's lips trembled in a nervous smile. We never became lovers in that very sense. I know, Christina grinned, and lingered even closer than she'd poked him on the cheek. And I kept wondering what was the point of getting a room for two and sleeping in separate beds. And I thought that here in this corner of Christina we could bond, take our relationship to the next level. But you're right. We're not technically lovers, but we're not really friends anymore. Any normal woman would start twiddling her thumbs. That we spend time together, that we have dinner, that we kiss, that we vacation together. She'd consider all that cheating. The full ones. And we don't even need a bed. Besides, even if we say nothing happened, you know she won't believe us. Yeah, Robert sighed. It's just that it's all so sudden. And you compare it to a sore tooth that could have hung around for months, but had to be pulled. Christina offered a not the most apt, but vivid parallel. Unpleasant, unexpected. But then you can forget about it. Robert knocked on the door a second time. He had his own keys, of course, but he would have preferred to enter the apartment so that Wendy would let him in. But she wouldn't open the door or answer the phone. It was understandable, though. Robert would not have been surprised to find the apartment empty. That is, the absence of his wife's things. And then to find her at her parents'. He was morally prepared that Wendy would tell about the affair to all relatives and acquaintances, and it would start. But for what he discovered when he opened the door with his own key, entered the apartment, he wasn't prepared at all. What is this? Christina pressed her palm to her mouth, and with her other hand pointed to the wreath. A funeral black wreath stood in the hallway, and on the ribbon was the name Wendy. No, dropping her travel bag on the floor. Robert, swaying as if drunk, strode down the corridor into the hall. Wendy, he thought he screamed, but in fact he whispered. Other tragic signs were found here. Mingled with the black cloth of the platinum cabinet mirror, on the joint photos stood black ribbons on the high pedestal, and carnations scattered on the floor. No. Robert clutched his hands in his hair. He looked around hysterically, as if he expected Wendy to materialize out of thin air, and it would all turn out to be some monstrous mistake, some stupid misunderstanding. She, Christina, was about the same shock. No one called you from the family. No sobbing, like Robert. The thought went through her head that something had happened to her. Maybe her heart burst from grief. He'd heard of such things, and he didn't know if his Wendy was real. Wendy's family. She'd died, and he hadn't been told, hadn't seen fit. Because he cheated. Robert. He shuddered in his bitter stupor, didn't immediately realize what was happening. Christina was waving her hand in front of his eyes and pointing at the phone. It was Wendy's phone. It was ringing. The caller ID was signed as Mom. Yes, Robert took the call. He waited to hear something that would confirm his fearful hunch. Robert, son, Molly spoke in her usual good-natured manner. Tell her to call me anyway. What? Robert pressed his hand to his chest. His heart was heavy, booming somewhere in his throat. Molly answered from the sanitarium. Or else she's gone and got some milk. No, let her call me and tell me normally what they feed there, what procedures there are. I mean, why the treatments? Christina's eyes widened. She also obviously wanted to understand what the conversation was about. Robert, after a couple of minutes, when he gave out only aha and aha, plus also necessarily Molly Vasilievna, finally ended the conversation and turned to the almost mistress with a silly face. She, living in the morning with her mother, said in the sanatorium left. And what is this? Christina waved his hands. How? But what does it mean? I don't know. Robert sat down on the couch with 2 fingers, putting the carnation aside. This is crazy, he muttered. She's alive, so it's this one. Go ahead, dial her again from her cell phone. Robert scratched his head, then recounted the conversation with his mother-in-law to Christina in detail. From the words of Molly, and Wendy went to a country sanatorium to improve her health over the weekend, which she additionally took time off work. She said that the sanatorium is necessary because the doctor advised so. Yes, also just wants to relieve stress and will take her phone with her. But the other one's not a smartphone. It's got buttons, but he will almost never use it because the psychologist advises minimum communication even with family and maximum focus on himself. Only understand the point, said Robert. My wife has never seen a psychologist. I suggested it to her myself. I told her that there were specialists in family relations, but she didn't understand it. You know, Christina said thoughtfully, twirling something in her hands and then holding it out to Robert, who took it and frowned. It turned out to be a booklet of the sanatorium Cedar Grove, which told about luxury outdoor recreation in high comfort. Look, there's an address and directions, Robert said, running his finger along one side of the booklet. So she went to the sanatorium after all, Christina said, confused. But what's this all about? I have no idea. Robert got up. But I'll find out. I'm going after her. I'm with you, and don't you dare object. Christina raised her hand warningly. After all, it's my fault too. I'll tell your wife myself that nothing happened between us. That now Robert was at a loss. And I thought, I don't know what's wrong with her head. Christina stepped carefully over the nail. But a normal person wouldn't do that. She's definitely having a nervous breakdown. And we're responsible for that. So let's get to the bus station. It's in the Cedar Groves by the Elks Antlers. But I think we'll get there soon. Robert tried to call his wife on the second number while we were getting there, but she was already picking up. He whispered in agonized anticipation, listening to one dial tone after another. And then suddenly they were gone too. Now the caller was temporarily unavailable. And Robert finally reached the sanatorium. And on first impression, it was a decent place. It was located in the suburbs, was really surrounded by cadders and their other warriors of trees. Hello, Robert. I flew up to the reception desk. Good morning. Smiled at the girl behind the counter. Welcome. I'm not on vacation. I'm looking for my wife, Robert blurted out. I'm sorry, the girl behind the counter said, embarrassed. I don't quite understand you. Robert tried to explain that his wife had come here and he needed to talk to her urgently. Family business. They had a fight and he's worried she might be a little out of sorts. I'm sorry, but we don't share information about our guests with third parties. The girl took a chance. What third party? Robert was indignant. I'm her husband. Good afternoon. There's a problem. There's a new character at the front desk. The receptionist is a very polite and equally repulsive-looking man in a suit. He too remained deaf to Robert's requests and demands and recommended him to contact his wife in any way he could, but not by trying to rage in their sanatorium. Robert, however, was stubbornly adamant. So, man, I tried a nice way. The mask of politeness fell off the receptionist's face. You're about to get kicked out by security. Get out. Pardon me for interrupting, but you're Wendy's husband. Maiden name Snigger. Robert turned around glumly, ready for someone else to show up who will prevent him from finding his wife. The man standing next to him did not look like a sanatorium employee. Rather, he looked like a scientist, such a classical intellectual, who came to write a clever book in the quiet countryside for inspiration. Jeans, plaid beer shirt, over blonde, slightly gripped hair, square glasses. He looked to be about 35 years old. Yes, there was always Snigger, Robert replied. Do you know her? In a way, the blonde man hummed. We can talk. It's okay, he said, to the receptionist, who was apparently one step away from calling security. These are my friends. Let's go. You see, I was just walking by and happened to hear a familiar name. That's what happened. Robert asked his wife, calling her by her maiden name because she kept it after the wedding. There was a little scandal about it, by the way. Wendy's mother-in-law took offense, considered it disrespectful to her son. But Robert did not insist. He understood and accepted that Wendy wanted to keep her last name. My name is Noah. The new acquaintance introduced himself. And you are? He looked questioningly at Christina. My acquaintance, Christina. Christina said, as if she were just an acquaintance, stepping next to him. After passing the hotel lobby, they entered a pretty room with an abundance of live plants. It looked like a winter garden, and they were seated in a corner behind a projecting part of the wall. Everyone on a sofa and an armchair. "How do you know my wife?" Robert was quick to ask. "She's here. You know, I've been seeing her for a while. Let's clarify a few things to prevent misunderstandings. I don't know Wendy personally, but let's just say I was familiar with her personality." In a certain sense, it's like Robert frowned. "I don't understand." "You know, it was a big surprise to me myself to hear that she might have shown up here." Noah, taking off his glasses, took a handkerchief out of his pocket and began to wipe them carefully. "You see, I'm a psychiatrist, trained in Switzerland, and practiced there for a while. And then I decided to come here. To be more precise, I was brought here by a patient. I have been treating him for a long time, but my colleagues told me about the unexpected development of this case. Let me start in order." Noah started off by explaining that he wasn't really a foreigner. His mother was Russian, but his father was a foreigner in the full sense of the word Austrian. Then, years ago, Noah, in the course of his work, acting as a colleague and assistant to a more experienced specialist, encountered one difficult case, which turned out to be a man in his 40s named Kevin. He had come to Switzerland for work. He had a good qualification as a welder, and for a few years he worked diligently for a construction company. But then, in fact, it all started with the appeal of his employer, who was concerned about the strange behavior of his subordinate. The fact was that Kevin, previously characterized by silent network and even withdrawn, suddenly became very active in communicating with others to convey their ideas. It turned out that he decided to found his own, figuratively speaking, cult. Kevin represented himself as its leader, hereditary sorcerer, having great power in the world of spirits. The essence of the doctrine composed. Kevin was that modern man suffers a lot and lives badly because he departed from the covenants of the ancestors and denied the unity with nature. And to be saved, it is necessary to restore all this. But the practical part, the essence of salvation, was seen not in the fact that, for example, people should treat nature more carefully, take care of their families, take care of their relatives. Not at all. First of all, he believed that it was necessary to starve, as well as absolutely obey him, because he has a connection with the spirits of nature, and he can request for them. Man has many different and good things, but above all cleansing on an energetic level. Kevin left his job and disappeared one day, but he was quickly found. It turned out that he had moved to some local village, where, strangely enough, he found followers. But Kevin didn't live in the village itself. He moved into an abandoned cabin in the woods. The employer went to him, and in the company of local environmentalists, because this house stood on the territory of the reserve, and no outsiders were supposed to be there. And Kevin, well, it turns out this madman got it from somewhere. Wolverine kept her in a cage as a pet, and then let her down on uninvited guests. Anyway, we didn't have a quiet conversation, and from the one that did take place, it was clear that Kevin was out of his mind. He declared himself the master of the Tega, although, strictly speaking, there was no Tega in Switzerland. That's how Kevin ended up in the local psychiatric clinic. He was declared insane. He spent several years there for treatment, and then he was deported. It's been years. Wait, Robert interrupted the narrator impatiently. But what does this have to do with my wife? You know where your wife was when she first turned 18? With a soft and sad smile, asked Noah. Well, of course I do. Then she would have started Robert, but he immediately stopped talking, thinking. She wanted to go abroad after school to study. I remember Grant telling me she won. Yeah, she was an honor student, and her parents helped with the money, and he's in over his head. She went to university in Switzerland. Yeah, we met after she got back from there. She came back very quickly. She hadn't been there 3 months. But what happened? You know, don't you? Robert looked anxiously at Noah and continued. Then Kevin went into the clinic for a reason. If he hadn't been recognized as mentally ill, he would have faced serious consequences. as a result of being charged with many crimes, including the fact that they're in the wooded abandoned cabin. It turned out he wasn't alone. The thing was that 2 months before the cult of the Master of the Taiga collapsed from one university, a girl Russian student who had come to study to be a designer disappeared. Her friend said she had gone to see the local beauty and was going to hitchhike back. They discouraged her, but for some reason she was convinced that Switzerland was a very safe country and nothing would happen to her. But as it turned out, it was this girl Wendy who was found in the gatehouse with Kevin. She was his niece, but by the time she was rescued, he had already taken the chain off her because he had achieved his goal of breaking the poor girl's psyche. The thing was that Kevin dreamed of having many wives. He said that to exchange energy with nature he needed at least 20 young beauties, and the first was 18-year-old Wendy. But she never said anything like that. Robert exhaled in shock. I didn't know that. It's the kind of story many people prefer to forget and not share with others. Noah grinned mirthfully. Have you heard of Stockholm Syndrome? Asked Noah. Robert shook his head. It's when the victim of an ordinary kidnapping begins to sympathize with his teacher over time, to understand his motives, to feel guilty about what happened. Noah was calmly explaining to Robert the nature of the trouble. What had happened to Wendy? After her release, she spent several months in a clinic where she was helped to literally piece back together her shattered personality. And then Wendy came home. Her parents said she just changed her mind about studying abroad, saying she couldn't handle the program and decided to change careers altogether, Robert said. But why didn't she tell me anything, even after the wedding? Because it's easier to forget about this nightmare. Few people are willing to go back to it, even mentally, even if it means opening up to those closest to them, Noah said. You said your patient brought you here. Breaking the somber silence that had fallen over the small company, Christina. You were talking about Kevin or Wendy. I'm afraid. Perhaps it's about both now, Noah said thoughtfully. The thing is, Kevin's back after so many years in the doldrums. He's trying to start a cult again, but now he's just the local weirdo around here for now. It's like he's not doing anything wrong. I mean, a man has a right to believe what he wants to believe, right? But I'm afraid he'll go beyond that. I'm afraid he's even more dangerous now. And for all I know, he's here, the sanitarium. Round my eyes. Robert? No, somewhere in one of the villages around here or in the woods, Noah said. And your wife, what did you say about her coming here? Her strange behavior. Perhaps she would have heard the chase, or he contacted her himself, and he wants her back. And she wanted that too. Though I'll admit, it's all rather odd. And something else happened. It's hard to deal with. But Robert, and then talked about what they found in the apartment when they returned. Very interesting, Noah thought. But in principle it could be explained. It probably symbolizes that Wendy has decided to break with her past life, to sort of die to the world. Now I'm sure she didn't come here by accident. She's looking for Kevin. And maybe she's already found him. And tell me if she's had any major upheavals recently, any severe emotional distress. Robert. He felt uncomfortable under the doctor's piercing gaze. He hesitated, then answered, No, everything was fine. I was just away from home on a business trip and then came back. Back, he corrected cheerfully. And here we are, me and Christina. A coworker I know. We're looking for Wendy, my wife, now. I see, said Noah, and Robert had the strange feeling that Dr. Steele had looked right through him and didn't believe what he said. What do we do? Christina asked. Who do we call? Who can help us? I think right now we can and should act on our own, said Noah. After all, if right now Kevin isn't violating anything, if he hasn't kidnapped anyone else, then technically the man can do anything. So I think it's best we find him to start with. And as for your wife, I don't suppose she's here at the sanitarium. Unsure if I'd ever seen her here. I'd have noticed and remembered. Although, of course, I might have missed something. But I don't think she's here. And you know what? Is there any other place to start looking? I've been meaning to go there myself. It's the village of hedgehogs. What a nice name, huh? Christina smiled. When do we go? Best right now, Noah got up. I have to pack. I'll be quick. Did you have a car? No, sighed Robert. What, are you stuck in mine? I rented a car, said Noah. The road to the village was fast and easy. It had been cleaned and was in good condition. There was silence on the road. Everyone had something to think about. Christina was reflecting on the fact that she had no intention of becoming the disciple of a happy family at all, and she would never have become the mistress of a married man if he had been doing well. But Robert, after all, he had said that he and his wife had been living as neighbors for a long time, and that it was mutual, that they had no feelings. And so her affair with Robert Christina saw in the long run as something positive, not only for herself, but also for Wendy. After all, after the breakup, she could certainly meet another man with whom she would be happy. And that was weird. But right now, her own former views didn't seem so right to Christina anymore for some reason. She realized that, in fact, it was a flawed idea to break into the family, no matter what Robert said. If he was already divorced, then it would be possible to make love with a clear conscience. But as it was a bad thing. Hedgehog Village had once been a thriving place, but now there are mostly old people left here and very few young people. From the sanatorium to it was a short drive of less than half an hour, and since they didn't know how long it would take, Noah suggested to Robert and Christina that they get a room at the sanatorium. Fortunately, there were rooms available, and they immediately paid for their stay for 3 days. The girl at the reception desk looked suspiciously, but did not say anything, and she gave out the keys to 2 rooms. And what to do next? Christina drummed her fingers nervously on her knee. Just knock on houses and talk to people. Luckily, I found out something, Noah said. Turns out he managed to search social media for locals and found someone. A kid named Christopher. This teenager was into computer games, but did well in school, and even won the Olympics in biology. He lived part of the time in the city with his father and mother, and for vacations he came to the village where he lived with his grandfather. I signed up with him, Noah said. The boy sought help on the internet, joined groups where young people share problems in their relationships with their parents. He's in trouble. The mother and father believed Kevin. I wrote that I was the man's former primary care physician. Christopher is a smart boy, grinned Noah. He didn't believe me right away. He demanded a scan of my diploma to confirm that I'd worked in Switzerland. He also said he wouldn't pay me any money. He'd had enough of one crook in his family. Anyway, we talked, and we're on our way to see him right now. Grandpa Christopher's house was at the very edge of the village. When the little company knocked on the gate, a huge dog came out of the box, and it was off the chain, and in fact it looked like a pure wolf. Robert shrieked with fright and almost ran away. I found a place out of the house in my slippers and threw them over my shoulders, and a skinny, tall teenager came out in a tulip. Noah, he said with a squint, approaching and opening the wicket. First time I've seen a foreigner. Nice to meet you. Noah replied with a smile and shook Bora's hand firmly. And who is that with you? Asked the young man, a little suspiciously. Psychiatrists do. Will you catch him together? Christopher's eyes lit up with excitement. Not exactly, Noah hummed and introduced his companions. Wow, said Christopher at the fact that Kevin probably had a willing captive. Let's go inside. It's frosty today, and Grandpa and I have just put the samovar on. The invitation was accepted by all with great pleasure. True, Robert was only glad to be warm, and so a piece of food was not in his throat. Christopher's grandfather, Sebastian, turned out to be a sturdy old man about 70 years old with a decent tail. He welcomed the guests cordially and took Noah very seriously, saying that they could use help with this scourge. Yeah, he was here the other day, Sebastian said. Kevin, this one, went to get him to go door to door with Stephen. That's my Christopher's father. Stephen is his father's name. You see, they wanted to talk to people. This journalist is still curious. I told them, why are you filming him? Can't you see he's crazy and you're trying to stir him up? What's it to the journalists? Are they filming themselves? I think this sectarian got Stephen drunk. And a drunk man, you know what I mean. Sebastian was coughing. You just pour ideas into his head and he's happy to carry them. Maybe he's also a hypnotist. What do you think? Sebastian looked questioningly at Noah. I'd say he has a dark charisma, but no hypnotic powers, he replied. So that makes two of them. Where do they live? Do we know? There is a version of it. Sebastian scratched his snow-white beard thoughtfully. In the woods. Back in the 90s, a businessman wanted to build a house, almost built it, but he didn't live there. He disappeared. Well, there are ruins there. I don't know how to live there, but things happen. Sectarians. The old man waved his hands. They are capable of anything. Suddenly, the door of Senya in the main room of the house ajar, and in it woke up a dog's muzzle eyes flashed yellow. Maida is a good girl. Christopher beckoned the beast with that sausage, and when she approached, fearlessly sliced the treat, handed it to the toothy mouth. What an interesting breed, said Robert, to whom it seemed that besides sausage this creature was interested in something else in this room, or rather to say him. What breed? Grandfather waved his hand. Her mother ran away in the woods once. Took a long walk. I was thinking of getting a new dog, but she came back and brought the only puppy she had. I think so, grinned the old man. No other way than with a wolf. She made friends. She looks a lot like the Volga she found. I took her to the vet once, and everyone in town ran away from us, even though she was wearing a muzzle. Robert was also ready to run away, and in different directions at the same time, because Nada suddenly decided to sniff him, and the expression on her face became somehow squeamish. And then he sneezed. The dog wolf grunted and muffled. She doesn't like you, Christopher said, but calmly and even cheerfully. That's all right. She doesn't like many people at all. You're her type, though, the boy added, watching Noah scratch the animal behind the ears and wag his tail. Oh, how cute. Christina smiled and took the opportunity to stroke the obvious predator. Christina snuggled up to Noah, and Robert knew it was strange and silly to feel that way. But he felt a pang of jealousy. Had he noticed that Christina was acting differently in the company of this style doctor, flirtatious or something? Could it be that? Because he's a foreigner. And there was nothing intimate between him and Christina. They hadn't really started a serious relationship, but the prick of jealousy from logical reasoning never went away. So we should go to the woods, Noah said, and maybe we can settle this quietly, without too much trouble or fuss. He had no time to speak before the door of the house behind the drums, and somehow there was a sense of urgent, pressing need for this post. Or maybe there was trouble. Christopher went to open the door, and returned a minute later with a woman in her 40s. She had a crying face and a completely insane look. And here is the victim of our #1 sectarian. Sebastian's grandfather pointed at her with both hands. My daughter. Here she is, Dr. Jenna. And we have a psychiatrist, by the way, from Switzerland, and knows your guru of 3 days, continued the old man, not hiding the snide. My daughter has already grown big, and it's too late to bring you up, but out of respect for mine, be kind enough to sit down. Listen to what the learned man has to say. You have a lot of interesting things to say about Kevin the psychopath. Sebastian turned to Noah. He was about to answer, but Jenna, having finally regained her breath, blurted out first, Daddy, I was wrong. Oh, Daddy, what a fool I was. And the woman sobbed. You sit down. Christina, please sit down. Who are you? Asked Jenna, taking the advice to sit down. An acquaintance of mine, said Robert, and I'm the husband of a woman who seems to be a prisoner of this sect again. But what's going on? Dad? Asked Jenna, wiping her nose with a handkerchief. Then Christopher briefly outlined the situation to the mother. So what happened? Where's Dad? I told you not to talk to that psycho, the teenager resented. He's like hypnotizing. And you all, that this secret knowledge will help teach you how to live. Well, I figured it out. Did you realize that? Who you messed with? And adults are smart. You on the mother, not on the gray, shook his head old man. And not such adults and smart in a hat are sometimes insects. Jenna, you explain calmly what happened, and then we'll think together. That's what we're here for. Jenna told everything, confused and embarrassed. This woman had a good education. She'd studied at a teacher's college. Now she confessed that she simply did not understand how she could fall for all this, how she and her husband could so easily believe in all this nonsense that Kevin had. He said he knew the means to cure a man of all diseases, how to gain even immortality. He said that telepathy and many other abilities are inherent in every human being. But the modern world is not allowed to reveal this potential. But he knows how to fix it. You know, it was like an obsession. Jenna splashed her hands. It's like you're becoming a different person. And I'm so ashamed to admit it, but you kind of rise above all the other people because you know the truth. You have a mentor, I mean a master. And they are them. That is, all other people don't understand anything. They are stupid. But you realize that you were wrong. Noah gently took Jenna's hand lightly, squeezing her fingers. How did it happen? Kevin was at our house. Jenna lowered her eyes. Christopher had already left here to visit his grandfather, and my niece came over to visit. And Kevin. Anyway, I realized he was interested in her. I mean, he started talking to her all of a sudden. I realized he wanted her to believe him too. And then, wow, what a horror. Anyway, I got the girl out quickly. Told her she better go now. You know, I was just in shock. Jenna gave me a pleading look. After that, Kevin told me off. And he and my husband also started talking about how Kevin has this idea that he needs young girls to keep his body's energy balanced. He said that his followers who proved themselves faithful would also have access to girls, that he, as a teacher, would reward his faithful servants. And that's when I realized what we'd gotten ourselves into. I just can't believe my husband would go along with any of this. We had a fight with him. He said he would become Kevin's most loyal disciple. He would get younger and grow new teeth and a new liver because Kevin would teach him something. My husband said that it is impossible to interfere with him, and I am his enemy against the fact that he then, under the control of the teacher with young girls, energy magical produce. And that's when the madness became clear to me. Mom, I'm going to interrupt Dad, Christopher said, and Jenna, hearing this, shrieked softly and cried and began to say that it was wrong. After all, it's Dad, and he's just misguided. Then she added that that wasn't all. Kevin wanted the apartment signed over to him. And Jenna's husband agreed. He wrote a deed of gift for his share of half the apartment. You know, it just goes to show that in his line of work, Kevin belongs to a well-known, shall we say, type of sect leaders, Noah said. Usually, it is hardly the main thing they need from their subordinates to be given money and property. Mantis is let's be strong. Okay, said Christopher, and then turned to the others. What to do? You can't just sit around and wait to see what happens next. We gotta get this bastard. You take it easy, kid, said Robert. I understand everything, but let's not panic and no hasty decisions. If you are careful for a long time, Grandpa Sebastian said thoughtfully, the fish will eat the bait and swim away. What am I saying? I think we should visit someday. Like, right away and without any curtsies. After all, he's got at least 2 people coming out now, right? He's bent his fingers. Your wife, Robert, that's 1. And my son-in-law, that's 2. So there's a good reason we're family. So we got a right to worry about family people. It's winter. Now you understand. The sun has risen, and it's already sunny. So it's better to go in the morning. And besides, I have a friend here. He's a smart guy. He's an experienced hunter too. I'll ask him to help you. He'll be back in the village tomorrow. I'll talk to him. So we'll just wait. Robert was indignant. as long as my wife is with it. If Kevin hasn't changed much, Noah reassured him, then your wife is relatively safe. He's probably giving her very long lectures. I mean, all that nonsense about his teachings. Kevin likes to take a long time to process people he needs something from, and what he needs from my Wendy. Robert asked grimly. The same thing he needs from this family, I suppose. The psychiatrist nodded at Jenna. He just intends to take over someone else's property. Sebastian insisted that there was no need for anyone to return to the sanitarium. There was enough room in his house to accommodate everyone in a slightly cramped, but quite cozy overnight stay. Noah agreed to the proposed plan. Christina supported him warmly, and Robert once again noted how quickly she had changed the object of her affections. That is, he knew in his mind that their affair was already over, but it was still unpleasant. She could not, at least for the sake of decency, not flirt so blatantly under his nose. Robert woke up in the morning, but at an hour when it was still dark outside the window. Lying on his back, he stared at the ceiling. He could not get it out of his head that Wendy, his sweet, kind Wendy, was now at the mercy of some madman who could do anything to her. I'll wait for you, of course, he muttered quietly under his breath. Robert, rising cautiously, he realized how Sebastian would go to talk to the man in the morning. It would be a while before that hunter would be their guide. Maybe another 24 hours. Robert began to pack, and he did it quietly, because he did not want anyone to stop him. He didn't intend to wait any longer. And let this Noah, this brain-dead right-winger from Switzerland, the scholarly type. But only he, Robert, is a man and a man's man, not a wimp, to sit still if he's told to. And that's why he's gonna go and save his wife right now. End of story. Like save her, but he's gonna bash that Kevin's head in. Robert remembered what Sebastian said about landmarks. If you stick to the clearing and go strictly north, then reach the big rocks, and there turn left past the frozen lakes, there would be this house. Before leaving the house, Robert thought for a moment. Sebastian might have some kind of weapon. He could use it. But on the other hand, he had never handled one in his life. And so Robert decided to go as he quietly walked out of the yard. Nada, getting out of her fortified box, gave the man a thoughtful look, and then, unnoticed by the pursued man, followed him. Her father was a real wolf after all, and she resembled him not only in appearance, but also part of her essence. When everything happened, when the merciless reality crushed Wendy and made her feel infinitely alone and simply destroyed, she would, if only she had been allowed, have given anything for salvation, whoever offered it, and whatever the price. And in those moments when the journalist on TV was talking about Kevin, the young woman's world turned upside down a second time. It was as if she was falling in weightlessness, and at the same time frozen in the void. A past that had been forgotten came flooding back. Peace, security, calmness, detachment from the problems of the real world. For there was Kevin, who had promised to take care of her. During those weeks spent in a psychiatric clinic in Switzerland, many specialists worked with young Wendy. And how did she resist their attempts to get inside her head? She resisted what they convinced her of. That Kevin was a torturer. He had broken her mind, subjugated her will. And then she realized it all. And the release came like a breath of fresh, ice-cold air. She remembered as a doctor, one of the assistants of a gray-haired elderly professor. I think his name was Noah. He had suggested that she could stay now voluntarily, and they would continue the treatment. They would help her to be completely free of the destructive program that Kevin had planted in her mind. But then there were the parents, who demanded that her daughter must hurry back home, and she didn't need any foreign clinic. She just had to come home, and everything would be all right. And Wendy did. She refused psychotherapy, as well as special medications. She believed she could cope without all that. The years flew by. Her parents didn't like to talk about it, and she herself thought it was a shameful stain on her foolish youthful past. But now the TV screen showed Kevin's face. How had he aged, changed over the years? His quiet voice promised salvation and the joy of oneness with nature. The discovery of the great mysteries, her voice as if to strike and caress at the same time, attracted like a magnet and frightened me into madness. "I am alone," said aloud to Wendy, rising from the couch. "No one needs me. I'm lost to this world." She suddenly realized what she must do. She must go back. After all, it had been a monstrous mistake to keep them apart. And he would help her again, show her the way, protect her, open her up with his care. Wendy didn't pack for a long time, just called her mother. Then she went to the ritual store and did what the image helped her to say goodbye to her home and her old life. Then she took a bus to the village of hedgehogs. And from there, with the help of a couple of concerned people, I found Kevin's house. It was amazing. But when he opened the door, he recognized her immediately. Wendy said. He smiled toothlessly. "My girl, how have I missed you?" And she fell into his arms with a sob. And then the door closed, and Wendy's world turned upside down for the third time. Now she was falling into a nightmarish slump of oblivion, losing herself with every breath. The winter forest greeted Robert in what appeared to be a welcoming manner. Her feet stepped lightly through the fluffy snow, which disappeared with silver and diamond chips. There were tits and some other birds around, and even the frost barely bristled, but the sleuths. Robert cheerfully imagined finding the home of the wacky hermit, breaking in, kicking the door in with his foot. And then, but there should probably be a fight between them like between a bad guy and a good guy in a Hollywood action movie. And then, of course, he's alive and not badly hurt. He will take his wife by the hand, say that she forgives her for everything, and they will go out of the woods together. This fantasy made me feel sweet in my chest, and for some reason, it sounded in my stomach. Yeah, I get it, Robert. It wasn't the thoughts. It was the fact that he hadn't had breakfast. He'd gone out. But it also seemed like it was rumbling in the stomach of someone who was following him or not. What was that strange sound anyway? Robert suddenly swallowed hard and turned around very slowly. Behind him stood the wolf. "Nada," he said. "Good girl." The animal cocked its head and cocked its ears and bared its fangs, as if to say that a good girl was definitely not for him, and quietly grumbled, snarling, "Nada." Robert vaguely remembered that with wolves and dogs, it seems, you can't run away with your back turned to them. He was also confused. Why was she following him? Why? Yesterday everything had been fine. However, it was still worth remembering that, according to Sebastian, in this animal genes mixed in half-pet and the age-old enemy of man, fearless wolf. And so some hustle and bustle in the woods ensued, as well as a clumsy chase, with the clumsiness in it 110% attributable to Robert. Two creatures, a man and a dog with a dash of wolf, ended up near an abandoned lodge in the woods. And actually, Robert had hoped Nada would leave soon. Really? All right. She got in her head and chased him off. But then she'd have to get back to her master. Robert remembered what Sebastian said about Nada being the smartest animal. He said he would not leave home for long. Generally very attached to the house, so I do not put on chains. But now, sitting in the gatehouse, Robert very much doubted the intelligence and kindness of this animal. And it was doubly sickening because he was stuck here, and he had to save his wife. And all the others have no idea where he had gone and what would happen next. Robert asked himself a thoughtful question. Meanwhile, other events were unfolding in another part of the forest. "We shouldn't have done that, of course, hero. We are going to the lair to the maniac," said John and pulled warm gloves on his hands. He had just finished digging into the engine of one of the two snowmobiles. And seemed to have fixed the problem. John had known the Sebastian family intimately for a long time. He was also well aware of the fact that a strange type of sectarian propaganda was coming to his home village, so he agreed to help right away. And the only thing that embarrassed him was the haste and the fact that the small company was hardly prepared for dangerous surprises. "We are lucky," said Noah. "Kevin is mad in part, but he is rather cowardly and would hardly risk open conflict with 3 people, said Christopher indignantly. He was strictly told to stay home with Sebastian, who said he was too old for that. As for Christopher's father, he was definitely no longer Kevin either. He called Jenna early in the morning and started apologizing and saying what an idiot he was. It turned out that he had just at some point, woken up and realized what he had done. And so having got out of the forest, Stephen in general during this time managed to get to the city, and now he was staying with his parents, who lied to him that they just quarreled with his wife. But they had already made up. Stephen, of course, was asked if he had seen a girl in Kevin's house, and he said that yes, someone had come. And Kevin introduced her as an old acquaintance of his, but nothing more was known to him. Jenna, of course, hurried into town. She had to support her husband, who had finally stopped his nonsense, and she also had to consult a lawyer about how to cancel the gift written in haste and under the pressure of sectarians. Christopher flatly refused to stay, just to sit with his grandfather. He said that if necessary, he would jump out of the window and run barefooted after him. Only they won't go into the woods without him. I'm allowed. I'm an adult, he said, proudly drinking his lower lip and flashing his eyes like an angry little child. And how old are you? Asked Noah. 16. Then there are no questions, grinned the doctor. All right, you're coming with us. But promise you'll obey. Agreed. Christopher said yes, and really did what he was told, and silently rode in the second and snowmobile with John. The other vehicle was occupied by Noah and Christina. Robert's disappearance, of course, did not go unnoticed and at first even caused panic. But Sebastian made a correct assumption that he decided not to delay in rescuing his wife and went into the woods alone. And because of that, one must be in a great hurry. And then there was Nada. The old man sighed. Maybe it's after him. Why? Raised an eyebrow at Noah. Yes. Why? I know, Sebastian said. She's so smart. I'm afraid of her sometimes. Maybe she thought he needed help. I don't know, said Christopher. He's kind of scared of her. And for good reason. Our Nada is a great dog. I can confirm that, grinned John. So, smart too. Last year, when we went duck hunting together, remember, Sebastian, but we thought it was Nada who was spoiling the hunt for us, jumping and barking. But then we realized it was her leading us on. She's beckoning us to follow her. And what do you think? John, as any self-respecting storyteller, the hunter held a spectacular pause. It turns out that she was calling us to the swamp. Where have you got the moose? We barely got it out of Akatov. You think she went after Robert? Because he might need help. Christina frowned, because it sounded so fantastic. You live as long as I have. Sebastian winked. You'll believe in more than that. If you do. I don't know, but Nada's been weird lately, that's for sure. She's been going out at night, silly girl. The snowmobiles stopped near a couple of tall pine trees that had grown so close to each other that they'd become intertwined with the trunks. See, over there, John pointed ahead, where the darker is the dense, naked, gloomy thicket of bushes. That's where the house is. That's how I got the people. He patted himself on the shoulder. There is a weapon, but I will not use it. Clearly, it's a restraining device. Let's say, to keep this lunatic from coming at us. It's loaded. Careful, asked Christina. In our village, hunters don't walk otherwise. Without a smile, John replied. We not only have wolves here, but if you go farther away, you can also come across a bear on a lynx. Christina moved closer to Noah, as if unconsciously fearful of you. If we get out, I will never go into the wilderness. I'll be in the city all the time. Noah smiled at her. The city is statistically just as dangerous. And me, he added, I love nature. My parents have a chalet in the mountains. We spend every New Year's Eve there. True, Christina smiled back and flapped her eyelashes. And how is it in Switzerland in general? Beautiful. Oh, Christopher wrinkled his nose and turned to John on the sea. Grown-ups go straight to love, as if there are no other interesting things in the world. So let's get down to business, strictly and loudly urged everyone to pay attention. John, the doctor, and I will go first. Christina, hang on, behind with the boy. Oh, sorry. Generously, he winked at Bora. With Christopher Ivanovich. Not freaking out, not in a hurry. Everyone went quietly. They didn't know what to expect, and they were quite surprised that when they approached the house, it seemed as if no one was in it, or there was a fence once outlining. The yard had long since rotted away. The house itself, despite the good brickwork, gave the impression that it might collapse and fall apart at any moment. John, stepping forward, cautiously approached the windows, peered through them, and waved his hand, saying, "You may approach." Then, walking cautiously around the house, he went up on the porch and knocked on the door. Silence. Strange, Noah said. Maybe he's not here anymore. Maybe he decided to settle somewhere else. Or what? Or he didn't have time to finish, because from inside the house came a sound, a muffled, suppressed, full of agony groan. "Let me," John, putting his hand on the door, gently pushed it open. It was not locked. Then, taking a flashlight from his belt, turned it on and initiated inside. Inside the house had managed to stand everything, but it was clear. Not so long ago a fireplace had been stoked here, or rather, a fire had been built in what was left of the fireplace in the entrance hall of the house, and the room that opened right behind it was in disrepair. But it was also clear that a man had lived here. Some of the dust had been wiped off. There was a relatively new mattress on the floor and some food on the table by the window. Kevin called out to Noah quietly, but with amazement, and the small company rushed to one corner of the room, where what they had at first taken for a mountain of old rags turned out to be a man who had plunged into anything, apparently putting on all the clothes he had. Noah didn't remember his patient's face well because he had been working at another clinic for the past few years. But now, having finally met the man whose face he had seen in a recent journalist's program, he realized it was definitely him. And in general, Dr. Steele had never been one of those psychiatrists who confidently made a diagnosis on first impression. But now, looking at this man, he could tell Kevin was sick, and the insanity of his former patient was now far more severe than what he and his colleagues had encountered when they had tried to treat the same man in the Swiss clinic. Kevin sat back into a sort of pathetic tangle and wrapped his arms around himself. His gaze darted hysterically from side to side. He looked as if through the people who had come in and whispered something. What he was muttering. Christopher asked, "Should I punch him?" The bastard decided to take the apartment. "I can understand your anger." Noah literally intercepted the already raised fist of the teenager. "But right now you have a sick man in front of you. He doesn't even seem to be aware of the reality around him." And as for his speech, the doctor frowned. "He seems to be afraid of the wolf. Yes, he says the wolf comes at night and dances around the house. He says the forest rejects his former master and wants to destroy him." "I don't understand," frowned John. "And just yesterday, this psycho was bragging about how cool he was. And now he's sickening to look at. He's a miserable man, and he looks like a complete psycho. We have such a character in our village, Vaska. When he's on a white fever, he's more normal. Kevin, can you hear me?" Noah, taking a miniature flashlight out of his pocket, shone it into the eyes of the former ambitious sect leader. "He's not well at all. I don't understand what could have changed his condition so dramatically. The human psyche, it's incredibly complex and malleable. But he needs to be admitted to a regular hospital immediately. He's clearly hypothermic and dehydrated. And of course, we need to contact the local psychiatrists. I'll tell them what happened to him during his treatment with us, and from there, he'll be their concern." John and Noah, with a shoulder to lean on, got him out of the house. Then they began to decide how to drive the snowmobiles back with some problematic load, but somehow they squeezed and accommodated him. Robert decided he'd had enough. He felt disgusted. He had pushed his wife into the arms of madness, and now he was powerless. He couldn't save her and left it to others. A few hours spent in the gatehouse, When he barely managed to start a fire, it was good that he found matches in his pocket. This Sebastian's grandfather had given him when they were going into the woods. Those few hours had proved to be the perfect time to think hard about everything. And now Robert had had enough. John swung the door open with determination and stepped outside. "Nada," he shouted, "I don't know why you don't like me so much, but I'm sorry, but I'm not afraid of you. And if you want to attack me, go ahead, but I'm still going after my wife." The last words Robert barely whispered over the rustling of bodies, because he nearly fell over immediately, because right in front of him, with one hand down on the beast, stood Wendy with her hair shot up in crumpled clothes, and with Wendy's eyes glittering feverishly. Robert swallowed hard. Suddenly, he remembered the legends and tales of the spirits of the forest that could take on different guises. "Wendy, I didn't cheat on you. I swear. I didn't do anything with Christina. I couldn't. Wendy, darling." The words came pouring out. Robert felt like he was in a dream. She was real. He was real. But as Wendy stepped toward him, the snow softly crunched beneath her feet, and then she threw herself at him tightly, hugged him tightly, and sobbed. He hugged her back. "Everything will be all right," Robert said. And there was nothing else he wanted to say right now. Questions and answers, explanations and confessions and promises, and forgiveness could and would have to wait. And now it was time to get out of the woods, and without mittens, Robert said. "Lost, yes," smiled Wendy as she ran away from the ghosts of the past. "Did you lose it too?" "Yes," nodded Robert as he ran away from the wolf. "Isn't that a dog?" Wendy's eyes widened. "A nice, kind dog." "Yeah," hummed Robert. Wendy looked with interest at the Nada, who suddenly turned and asked to go somewhere behind the trees. Then she stopped and turned around, as if inviting people to follow her, and they followed. And now Robert was no longer afraid. Wood crackled peacefully in the fireplace, and the amber ruby flames filled the room warmly and cozily with furniture and Christina. Robert and Wendy sat on the rug in front of the fireplace, staring into it and silent. A snowstorm had developed outside the window. Since the day they had met in the woods and Nida had led them out, it had been exactly a year. And what kind of year had it been? It was a magical 12 months that their lives changed forever. Yes, when the initial emotions subsided, they had a serious conversation. Robert confessed that he had an affair on the side and was ready to accept any decision of his wife, and even expected that there would be a divorce. After all, he was well deserving of it. But Wendy said she wanted to give them a second chance and try to start over. But back in those days, Robert and Wendy were concerned about more than just their relationship. They had many other issues to work out. So Wendy told about what had happened then in the abandoned house between her and Kevin. And it turns out they were just talking about the magnet. A strange beggarly fascination. This kind of return to the past quickly left Wendy, and she wanted to leave. But Kevin was against it. He demanded that she stay. He said she was certainly too old for him, but he had no intention of letting her go. Wendy, in those moments, already suddenly realizing what a mistake she had made, fell into a strange state. It was as if she had relived the horror and confusion that had seized her 10 years ago, when she had been rescued from the captivity of that madman. Stephen, by this time, was gone. This man in general quickly realized how misguided he had been in his supposed teachers and guides, to oneness with the natural world. And when Wendy and Kevin were finally alone, they were talking. And somehow it happened that the thread of the conversation, figuratively speaking, was suddenly in Wendy's hands. Wendy suddenly starts yelling at Kevin and saying how much she hates him. So he broke her life. She told how much it had cost her to feel human again, how she had tried to start a normal family, to live a normal life. "I made a mistake then. I let you break me," Wendy screamed. "And now how come? I thought I was alone. And you're the only one who can help me, but you can't. You're nothing but a worthless old fool. You're a madman." They were talking at the window of the old house, and suddenly Nada appeared outside the window. Kevin began to convince Wendy that she was wrong. Because here is an example in the forest. There are wolves, scary, scary beast. And only he, Kevin, can protect her from them. Wolves? Wendy laughed. It's just a dog. Wolves don't look like that. What are you? An old madman. You've never seen a real wolf. An argument ensued. And Wendy said she would go right out to the animal and not do anything to it. Kevin begged her not to. But Wendy came out of the house, saying it was just a dog from the village. Probably let it off the chain. So she ran in here. And when she freely stood in front of Nida and stroked her behind the ear, Kevin broke down. After that, Wendy went back into the house. She decided to wait until morning because it was already night. And they talked again, or rather, Wendy talked. She talked about her life, about how she had tried to find happiness, how wrong she had been, unable to build a decent relationship with her husband. Anyway, it was a very long monologue. She just needed to vent. So you're saying that Kevin, that he's lost his mind? I mean, he's completely freaked out just because my wife talked to him. Noah, Robert asked in amazement. Dr. Steele replied that the mind of a madman like Kevin has a bizarre structure. And yes, apparently, he just couldn't stand it. Couldn't stand the fact that his victim had grown stronger after years, had started to live a normal life. And even now, having come to him again and voluntarily, suddenly found the strength to resist his influence. After all, before that, all those whom Kevin had allowed close to him, they had obeyed him. And it should not have been ruled out, by the way, that he was abandoned by another man, Stephen. Basically, Kevin was shattered by the fact that he realized he had lost his power over people. He's not the same person he used to be. And he couldn't take that kind of humiliation from himself. Robert and Wendy would have wanted to stay out of it. But they watched what happened next and breathed a sigh of relief when they learned that Kevin had ended up in an insane asylum. But not in Switzerland. Stephen, by the way, managed to successfully revoke the deed of gift. He just took it with him when he left Kevin and burned it. Christina apologized to Wendy and soon quit the firm, moved to another city and later sent word, met a man there and married. Noah, on the other hand, returned home to Switzerland where he continued his practice. Before that, he talked to Wendy and expressed his admiration for the fact that, despite such a difficult past, she had found the strength to move on and fight for her happiness. But the highlight of the last year was when Wendy managed to get pregnant. Doctors said that it is a quirk of the body, in which something has adjusted itself. And now Robert and Wendy were enjoying a vacation in one cozy country holiday home. They were looking at the fire, holding hands, and just being happy. They were very happy. Subscribe and click the bell.
Charles, please think carefully. Barbara tried to talk some sense into her wayward son. She would never be the same. Why would you waste your life on a woman with a disfigured face? And the children? You'll want children someday, won't you? Don't you think they'll be afraid or embarrassed of their mother? They'll be teased if they see them with a mother like that. Son, I know you're being noble, but think of what's in store for you. You'll be tied to her for life. Mom, what are you talking about? Charles said with a wince, you can always get plastic surgery. Medicine today can put a person's face back together. We'll find the best clinic. I'll spare nothing for Monica. How much will the operation cost? Where will you get the money? You'll have to sell your apartment, and where will you live? Why would you put such a burden on yourself? Please cancel the wedding. Do you want me to kneel down? The woman hugged her son. Don't ruin your destiny, I beg you. How will you live with her? She's ugly. You won't be able to go out with her. Everyone will laugh at you. It's totally reckless to get involved with a woman like that. But I love her. Charles cried out. Don't you understand? Love? To hell with that kind of love. You'll find someone else. I don't need anyone else but her. I'll marry her anyway, no matter what she is. You have no right to forbid it. What's the world coming to an end with her? Look around, there are so many girls around, and you're so handsome, anyone would be happy to marry you. Spare my nerves, don't make any hasty decisions. Think it over. Things happen in life. If the wedding doesn't take place, the world won't collapse. You don't owe this girl anything. But it's my fault Monica's like this. How am I supposed to live with that? You don't know how I feel when I look at her. If I leave her now, who am I supposed to think I am afterwards? I've never been a scoundrel. You want me to betray her? Abandon her in her hour of need? You have pity in you, says your mother, and she's a bad counselor. First of all, you must think of yourself and me. I am your family. You'll have many women in your life, but only one mother. Are you trying to drive me to my grave? Barbara clutched at her heart. Ungrateful, selfish. To think he'd trade his mother for some girl. Maybe she's bewitched you. What are you talking about? Do you hear yourself? This is the 21st century. How else can you explain the fact that you value your own mother less than a stranger? Monica was on her way back from the treatment room. She was in a hurry because her fiancé was waiting for her in the room. She purred softly to herself, a simple melody. Her heart was overflowing with tenderness for her fiancé. She was already gripping the handle of the slightly open door when suddenly she heard, "Mother!" Charles looked at his mother in despair. "Don't make me choose. You know I love you very much, but Monica means a lot to me too. If you love me, if you care about me, then give up the idea of marrying her. I think she must realize that there can be nothing between you now. I will never accept her, and I will curse her if you do bring her into our home." The girl, holding her breath, waited to see what the bridegroom would say. He was silent for a moment, then a heavy sigh was heard. "Yes, Mom, I think you're right. I need to think about it. I'm glad you listened to my opinion. Remember, a mother would never do anything to harm her child. I care about you, about your future. It's good that Monica can't hear us talking. I have to find the right words so as not to hurt her too much. Oh, son!" There were tears in Barbara's voice. "How thoughtful you are." Monica stood silently with her back against the wall, tears choking her. "Charles, a friend once suggested, I recently discovered a cozy cafe. You should like it. Would you like to come over on Friday after work?" "Why not? It's been a long time since we've met for no reason." In the evening, the friends went to the cafe. "How do you like it here?" asked a friend. They had already ordered and were talking softly. "Yes, cozy. There are few customers and the food is decent." "Wait, the biggest surprise is coming up." He winked mysteriously. Suddenly the room was alive, chairs were moving, and his friend nodded toward the stage. Charles followed his gaze and marveled. A girl came to the microphone. She was incredibly beautiful, dark, thick hair, brown eyes framed by thick lashes, thin waist, and sensual lips. Music played and the stranger sang. Her high, strong voice penetrated the deepest depths of the heart, the most secret corners of the soul. Charles got goosebumps from her singing. "Who is it?" Charles could only say, he was so emotional he was speechless. "Monica." He grinned, noticing the gleam in the young man's eyes. A voice of astonishing beauty. "Would you like me to introduce you to her?" "No, really?" Charles was embarrassed. "It's embarrassing. Well, as you know, I wouldn't miss a girl like that unless I was already head over heels in love." Meanwhile, the stranger finished singing and the audience stood up to applaud her. The friends sat for a while longer, but Monica did not go on stage again that evening. Charles was conquered by the angelic voice of the singer. Secretly from his friend, he began to come to the cafe to enjoy Monica's singing. He tried to have time to take a table closer to the stage so that no one prevented him from admiring the girl. After each performance, he gave her flowers and soft toys. Monica. It was a month before Charles decided to approach her. "May I invite you to a table and offer you a glass of wine?" "I don't drink alcohol, but I would love a glass of water," the girl replied with a smile. She had paid attention to this man for a long time. She did not show it, but she secretly sighed for him, regretting that he was too timid. The young man pushed back a chair, inviting her to sit down, and he called the waiter and asked for water for the lady. "You sing very beautifully," Charles said, overcoming his embarrassment. "I've never heard such a wonderful voice in my life." "Is that why you come here every Friday?" "Yes, I come for you because I like you." "Can I order something for you?" "Thank you, but I'm in a hurry to get home. Will you let me walk you home?" Monica nodded in agreement. The young man was glad, paid the waiter, and left the cafe after the girl. "I live nearby," she explained. "It's very convenient. You don't have to adapt to transportation." "Did you study singing somewhere?" "Yes, I did, at the Institute of Culture at the Faculty of Vocal Arts." "You have real talent. Talent is 50% of everyday work, and the rest is a gift from above." "What it took for me to succeed. You must have had a great future." "Why did you give up the big stage? It wasn't just to sing in this cafe, was it?" "I can't believe this is what you dreamed of." "You're right," Monica admitted. "I had a successful solo career ahead of me, but one day, on a friend's birthday, we went to a karaoke. There I was persuaded to sing in public for the first time. I was accepted warmly. The audience did not let go for a long time and asked to sing again. And it was then that I realized that the big stage is not for me. I'm panic-stricken of performing in front of a large audience, so after I got my diploma, I got a job in this cafe." "Why here?" "There's probably a more popular place in town, and the pay is probably different." "What's special about it?" "I like the band of musicians. They have been entertaining visitors for a long time. Live music, sang, they liked it, and so it went. I don't regret staying here at all. Everyone treats me well. The owner of the cafe must have been happy to hire you." "Yes," Monica laughed. "He had more customers. Everyone came to hear me sing. I've been watching you for a month. You have your own fans who come to hear you sing all the time." "Are you one of them?" "Yes, I couldn't wait till Friday to see you again." "I'll admit, I've never seen that before. You're an amazing girl, and here's my house." Monica stopped. "I hate to part with you." Disappointedly said the young man. "I would like to invite you to the movies." "A movie?" The girl smiled. "Why not? Have you forgotten the last time you were in a movie theater?" Charles and Monica started dating. Their quiet, calm relationship gradually grew into love, and 3 years later, the young man decided to take a serious step. "Where are we going?" cheerfully asked Monica of Charles, noticing that instead of going home, the evening was approaching, directed the car to the countryside. "It's a surprise." Smiling, the man replied. He quickly cast a glance at his lover. The evening was lovely, the sky was clear, and the air was fresh. "Here we are." He stopped the car and helped Monica get out. "It's so beautiful." The girl gasped. "How did you find this place?" They stopped on the beach, the golden sand glistening in the setting sun, as if there were specks of gold scattered among its grains of sand, invisible during the day. "This is where my friends and I used to swim as children." From prying eyes, the beach was enclosed by a stone fence. They drove around the fence, and Monica shrieked in amazement. "What is this?" Sunset in the rays of the sun, flew pour plan, Not a cloud was visible. Suddenly, on the blue blanket of clear sky, there was a white image of a heart. My God, what a beauty! Monica jumped, clapping her hands like a little girl. How could this be? These are my friends. Smiling, Charles replied. Monica didn't know how to declare my love. The man turned the girl to himself and looked into her eyes. This is the most wonderful declaration of love. Monica said quietly, Thank you. Monica? Charles grew serious. I love you and I want you to be my wife. He took out a small velvet box from his jacket pocket, opened it, and a modest ring with a garnet appeared to the delighted girl. Will you marry me? Yes, she answered in a trembling voice, putting the ring on her ring finger. I've always dreamed of a ring like this. Tears glistened in the eyes of the happy bride. How touching, my love. She put her arms around Charles and kissed him. I was afraid you wouldn't agree. The young man pulled away from her. He took a step to the side and from somewhere in the pile of stones took out a bouquet of flowers. I want us to never part with you again. I want to spend the rest of my life admiring you. I want our children to be like you. How can I refuse you when you've made all this beauty for me? You gave me such a beautiful fall sunset. You don't see that in the city. Meanwhile, the sun was sinking below the horizon, and the river was cool. Monica shivered. Are you cold? Charles asked thoughtfully, putting his arm around the girl's shoulders. Let's go home. I want to celebrate the engagement soon, and there's another surprise waiting for us. The young people stood for a while longer, watching the paragliders in the sky. It's a pity that the image of the heart disappeared so quickly. Monica was upset. We will definitely come back here, the man promised. And if you want, we can go up into the sky ourselves. They got into the car and drove home. You've made a real holiday for me today, Monica exclaimed. They almost didn't get into the apartment. When did you get here? She gasped when she saw the table set. In the center of the table stood a huge bouquet of roses. It wasn't difficult at all, Charles grinned, helping the girl to sit down at the table. One phone call, card payment, and dinner was on the table. You're a spender. Monica laughed. I don't spare anything for you. Raising his wine glass, the man said, I am the happiest man today because the woman I have loved for a long time said yes to me. What else is there to dream about? It makes me happy to give you gifts. You admire them so sincerely. I love you. I love you very much. Monica, looking at him with eyes full of adoration. I don't know how I ever lived without you. You're the most precious thing I have. It's so nice to have met you. We should think about getting married, but first I want you to meet my mom. Charles suddenly announced. Now that I've proposed to you, it's a must. Besides, Mom's been dying to see you for a long time. I have to go on a business trip for a couple of months, and I'll come back and we'll get together. I'm sure you two will be friends. Mom's a wonderful woman. She only has one flaw. She loves me too much. He laughed. What if she didn't like me? That can't happen. If I like you, Mom will like you too. Don't worry, I'm sure you'll get along. Monica was counting the days until the return of her lover. She was anxious to meet his mother. One evening, the doorbell rang. Her heart jumped with happiness. Charles had arrived. Darling, I'm back, the man announced, standing on the threshold with a bouquet of flowers. I missed you so much. When I close my eyes, I see you. He stepped into the apartment, opened the girl's arms. And me. Trustingly, embracing her lover, she replied. I even marked the days in the calendar to bring our meeting closer. Let's not be apart for so long. It depends, but I'll try to be near you more often. Christmas is coming soon, the man informed freely, sitting down on the couch. I want to offer you a little trip. How would you feel about celebrating the holiday in Finland? I have the ticket in my pocket. He waved the ticket in front of her. Do you mind? What do you mean? Monica got excited. I never even dreamed of such a trip. I've never been abroad. But tomorrow my mom is expecting us for dinner. No refusal is accepted. She is preparing, and if you refuse, she will be offended. You don't want to upset your future mother-in-law, do you? No, what do you mean? I'd love to meet her, agreed the girl. She was anxious. She didn't know how her future mother-in-law would feel about her. In the morning I'll pick you up by car. We'll go in advance. Mom does not like it when late. And the weather promises not for walks. That day it was freezing in the morning, even though it had rained the day before. Slippery, Monica remarked worriedly, looking at the glistening crust of ice that covered the road. It's nothing, her fiancé reassured her. There is enough time. We won't hurry. The road is a road. Here and there, they got into traffic jams. They had to ride in the traffic. We are indecently late. The man frowned. Mom won't be happy. I didn't want to earn a reproach on the first day of our acquaintance. But it's not our fault there are so many accidents on the road. Monica was careful. She's a smart woman. She'll understand everything correctly, and on the contrary, she'll praise us for being careful. Try explaining that to Mom. Watching the road carefully, Charles said worriedly. She doesn't tolerate delays. Finally, we're on the highway. Relieved, the man sighed. Now we can step on the gas a little more. There are not many cars, and if we hurry, we can make it in time for lunch. Charles, please don't hurry. Monica tried to stop him. Look, the road is slippery. I'm afraid. You're not. The man waved his hand nonchalantly. I have a front-wheel drive beauty. Will not let you down. Even if it skids, a little more gas will level itself. Listen, he asked the girl. Get some water. It's behind my seat. My mouth is dry. Monica unbuckled her seatbelt. She couldn't get it any other way. At that moment, the car swerved. Hold on. Charles shouted fearfully, trying to straighten the car, but the car was out of control. It won't listen to me. Charles! The girl watched in horror as the car swerved from side to side on the road. Do something. We're going to crash. Slow down. It happened in an instant. They were thrown to the side of the road. Charles tried to avoid hitting the tree, but the impact couldn't be avoided. There was debris flying. Monica was thrown through the windshield. Charles' airbag deployed. He lost consciousness for a while, his head hitting the door. People were already running to their aid. Kid? Charles heard someone's voice. Are you alive? We're going to get you now. Are your arms and legs okay? Say something. Monica? The man spoke slowly. Monica, is she alive? I had a girl with me. How is she? What's wrong with her? Tell me, what's wrong with Monica? She's alive, but the girl's unlucky. Her face was shredded by shrapnel. They're giving her first aid now. Hang on, kid. The ambulance is on its way. They helped him out of the car. Charles leaned back against the car, clutched his head. He was dizzy, but staggering, he reached the place where his fiancée was lying. Doctors were busy around her. Darling. Charles fell on his knees in front of the girl, crying, grabbed her hand and brought it to his lips, kissing her. Forgive me. I was a fool not to listen to you. I'm sorry. What have I done? With fear thought the man, looking at the disfigured, deep cuts on the face of his bride. It's not her. It can't be my Monica. Is this mess the face of my beloved? Is it my fault she's become like this? She'll never forgive me. God, there's no forgiveness for me. I can't feel my face. Barely moving her lips, the girl said. Charles, hearing her voice, realized that in front of him, covered in blood, really lay Monica. You can't talk at all right now, and neither can you, young man. With a stern look at Charles, the doctor said, treating the wounds, It wouldn't hurt to come with us. You look very pale. I'm fine. You're just in shock. You should be under observation for a while. Can you walk on your own? Yes, I'll come with you. Monica, I'm with you. Don't worry, love, I'll be right here. Who is this girl? She's my fiancée. Monica, my darling, everything will be all right. Hurriedly reassured the man, sitting next to her in the car, he tried not to look at her. Charles? Monica asked in a whisper, What's wrong with my face? Tell me the truth. I don't know. It's bandaged. You'll be fine, they'll fix you up. Don't say anything, you mustn't worry. We'll go to the hospital, they'll fix it. Just hold on. I can't feel my face. It hurts so much. She cried and fell into darkness. Monica slowly opened her eyes. Well done. She heard a cheerful male voice beside her. She's awake. You gave us quite a scare. What's wrong with me? Slowly asked the girl. It was hard for her to look at the man leaning toward her. Am I in the hospital? You have a concussion. The doctor was silent. Your face and hands were the worst affected. Do you remember the accident? She raised her hands. They were bandaged. Monica brought them to her face, touched them, and cried out in pain. Yes, I remember. It was slippery. We lost control. And when you take the bandage off, I want to see my face. In a couple days. The doctor's been quiet again. Then we can assess the extent of the damage and decide what to do next. We'll need plastic surgery, and I think we'll need more than one. We'll do what we can. My face, is it badly damaged? Will I have any scars? Tell me, I want to know the truth. I don't want to lie to you, but you'll never be the same as you were before the accident. I'm sorry. The cuts from the glass were too deep. We'd, of course, stitched you up, but the scars, they must be dealt with. Nothing is impossible today, the doctor reassured her. Now you know what kind of technology. They'll put you back on your feet in no time. The girl's eyes showed tears. Where is my phone? She asked in a weak voice. I need to call my mom. She's worried. I should have told her a long time ago that we'd reached the guests. And Charles? Suddenly the girl asked. How is he? I want to see him. Is he here too? He's already home. He's lucky. He's practically unhurt, just shocked from the impact. The doctor handed her the phone. Wouldn't you rather worry about yourself? All right, I'll leave you to it. He's on his way out of the room. Don't talk too long. You should get more rest. When the door closed behind him, Monica dialed her mother's number. Mommy, with tears in her voice, the girl said. Monica heard her mother's frightened voice in the phone. Why can't I reach you? Where have you disappeared? How can you make me worry? I almost went crazy with worry. I don't know where to find you. You didn't leave an address. Where are you? Mommy, please come. I'm very sick. I'm in the hospital. She heard her mother cry out. Then there was a short beep. Monica. A couple hours later, Betty was at her daughter's house. Oh, my darling, how could it be? She wailed when she saw her daughter. She sat down on the edge of the bed, took her bandaged hands in her own, and kissed them. What happened? Barely holding back tears, she asked. Mommy. The girl spoke quietly. Charles and I were on our way to visit his mother, and the car skidded. She fell silent, then grinned crookedly. Am I very ugly? No, you're not, my dear. Betty gently stroked her face hidden under the bandages and smiled. "You're the prettiest. You're my daughter." Her mother's heart was bleeding and sobs were ready to burst from her chest, but she held on. "I have no right to show weakness in front of my daughter. I must be strong," the woman thought. "She needs my help now, not my tantrums." The doctor said that surgery would be necessary, but it would have to be paid for. He said it can be fixed. "We'll do it. Don't worry. We'll find the money, and Charles will help." "Where is he, by the way?" "What about him? You haven't called." "He's only got a mild concussion and some minor cuts, but he's okay. He just needs some time to recover. Get his car fixed." "He hasn't called yet, but I'm really looking forward to it." "Well, all right. Betty's up. I'm going to go. The doctor said not to stay long, and I'll come back tomorrow." She leaned over and kissed her daughter. "Get well. Don't miss me. I love you." The woman left the room and went to the doctor's office. "Doctor, tell me, how is Monica's condition?" "What should I prepare for?" "I must admit, I can't give you much hope. The cuts are deep, and I'd be more concerned about her mental state. She has yet to realize that her appearance is irretrievably lost. I think your biggest challenges lie ahead. Raise the money for the surgery and be patient. There's a lot riding on this, including you. It will be a terrible blow for her to see herself." Grief-stricken, Betty walked out of the office, tears choking her. She left the hospital, sank down on a park bench without strength, and finally gave vent to her tears. "My poor, poor girl," she thought. "How unlucky she is. She won't be able to go on stage now. It would kill her." "No way." The woman wiped her tears. "I'll do anything to get my daughter back to her normal face, no matter how much money it costs." Determined, she drove home. "Son." Barbara blocked her son's path. "Where are you going?" "The doctor said to stay in bed a little longer." "Mom, I have to go to the hospital. Monica's waiting for me." "I can't hide like a coward." "You can't go." The woman was frantic. "You need to rest." "Are you kidding me?" "Concussion. Look at you. You're still so weak. I won't let you in." "Mom, you can see I'm perfectly fine. I should be with her. It's been 2 days and I'm still lying around. She's waiting for me. She doesn't even know what's wrong with me. She's poor, alone." "She's not alone." Pushing her son back to the bed, Barbara said, "There are doctors and nurses looking after her. I'm the one looking after you here, and I'm very concerned about your health, and I don't care about your Monica. Get back to bed right now." "Mom, I'm fine. I'm healthy now. I want to see Monica. She needs my support. You can't stop me from going to see my fiancé, who I haven't even met yet. We were just on our way over to meet you." Charles sank down on the bed, wrapped his arms around his head. "When the accident happened, and it wasn't our fault that it happened." "Listen, Mom." He jumped to his feet. "I have to be there for her. She needs me. She thinks God knows what she thinks of me. She'll say I've given up, and I'm sitting at home, healthy and strong, while she's still in the hospital. You can't stop me. I'm going to her. That's the way it is." The woman chin up. "I'm coming with you, and I'm going to meet this girl. I won't let you go alone, and don't mind. What if you get sick? Why would you go there? She'll feel uncomfortable around you. Let's wait until Monica's out of the hospital. We'll get together at the table like we planned. I still have to get the tickets. We're not going to Finland now, and I've been looking forward to spending Christmas night in a small town in a medieval fortress. It's so romantic. There will be more romantic encounters in your life. Not anytime soon." The man became sad. "By the way, you could go there alone." "That's not a bad idea. You'll recover from all this horror Forget it like a bad dream. How could I ever forget Monica's face? You don't know what happened to it. He squeezed his eyes shut, remembering the bloody bride. I can't believe all this happened to us. Don't torture yourself. It's already happened, and there's nothing you can do about it. You have to go on living. There's nothing wrong with you, and she'll be fine. Mom, if you could see her, she's never going to get better. I have to support her. Poor thing, she doesn't know what's ahead of her. I don't mind, just on my terms. So, what? We go to the hospital together. Otherwise, I won't let you out of the apartment. Don't talk me out of it. Okay, Mom, we'll go together. My son gave in. Monica was dozing. She heard the door creak softly and opened her eyes. Hello, darling. She heard her fiancé's voice. I'm sorry I couldn't visit you sooner. Charles. The girl rejoiced and stood up on the bed. I've been waiting for you to come to me. It's very boring here without you. Lie down, lie down. A young man came to her and lowered himself down beside her. Help me, please, Monica asked. Put a pillow under her back. Sitting down, she asked, How are you feeling? I was really worried about you. You didn't call. You didn't come. I didn't know what was wrong. I'm fine. I wasn't really hurt. I feel fine now. Nothing and not good. Barbara jumped in. He's a victim of the accident, too, but he's trying not to show it. He barely woke up and came straight to the hospital to see you. Monica, meet my mom. Embarrassed by his mother's cold tone, Charles said, Nice to meet you. The girl said quietly, It's a pity we had to meet under such sad circumstances. Barbara said calmly, But I was eager to see the girl my son had told me so much about. What do the doctors say, sweetheart? They say it's going to require plastic surgery. I'm sorry to hear that. I sympathize with Barbara. But you're young, you'll like yourself. When it heals, you'll be as good as new. Monica nodded in agreement, but she kept her eyes on her fiancé. I'm feeling fine now, so I'll come to see you more often, Charles promised. Then you'll get your stitches out and come home. And our wedding? The girl stuttered. The wedding will have to be postponed. Charles looked at her guiltily. I'm sorry about that, but don't worry, we'll be fine. The main thing is to get you out of the hospital as soon as possible. Monica? A nurse came into the room. Let's go to the treatment room. She helped the patient up. I'll do the dressing. Will you wait for me? Monica asked me in a pleading tone. Will you stay with me a little longer? Yes, Charles nodded. Don't worry, I won't leave. Come back soon. As Monica was led away, Barbara turned on her son. What wedding are you talking about? Don't even think about it. I didn't raise you to spend the rest of your days with an invalid. What are you talking about, Mom? Charles was outraged. Monica, not an invalid. We'll operate on her, and more than one if necessary, and she'll be just like she was before. Haven't you realized yet that she won't be the same? You're gonna spend the rest of your life working on her plastic surgery. Your father should hear you now, she cried. How much do I miss him? You don't cherish and appreciate me at all. How can you do this to your mother? Why am I being punished like this? Are you going to ruin yourself for some girl? My father and I hoped that we'd be supported in our old age, but you're ungrateful. Don't be silly. Charles hugged his mother. I'm very grateful to you for being faithful to your father all your life. You think he didn't see how hard it was for you? Yes, you were 7 when your father was gone. I raised you alone. It's so beautiful to see how handsome you've become. Tall, slender, blue-eyed, and even in high school, girls followed you in droves. Look around, and there are so many beautiful girls, healthy, full of strength. Choose anyone. I don't want any others. Charles was stubborn. I want to marry Monica. She'll get well, and you'll see what a wonderful person she is. You stubborn, soulless son. Mother was angry. She is not your wife yet, but she has already come between us. And yet I have never wanted anything for you. I have lived for you. And now in my old age, I find out that some girl is dearer to me than my mother. Did I think I'd live to see such black ingratitude for my favorite son? No, mother. In despair, Charles exclaimed, you are both dear to me. She will cost us dearly. Why are you clinging to her? You want to lay your life, your career on the altar of love? Will she appreciate it? I know the kind of girl who'll use it and spit it out. How long does she have to be in therapy? A year, 2 years. I want to have grandchildren, she cried. I don't know how long I have left in this world. Will she be able to give birth to a healthy heir? I beg you, son, don't ruin yourself. Do you want us to pay her money to leave you alone? What do you need her for? But it's my fault that Monica has become like you don't understand. I can't eat. I can't sleep. I can't sleep. I have nightmares at night with her bloody face in front of me. I must stay with her. It's the pity in you. Mother objected. She's a bad counselor. First of all, you must think of yourself and me. I'm your family. You'll have many women in your life, but only one mother. Are you trying to drive me to my grave? Barbara clutched at her heart. Ungrateful. Monica was coming back from the evil office. She was in a hurry to see her fiancé. Her heart was singing. She longed to be with him a little longer. The presence of his mother was a disappointment, for from the first moment, it was clear that she did not approve of her son's choice. But even this circumstance did not prevent the girl from rejoicing at the long-awaited meeting. She had already taken the handle, slightly at the open door, as suddenly heard. Mom. Charles spoke in desperation. Don't make me choose. You know I love you very much, and I realize that I owe you everything. If you love me, if you care about me, give up the idea of marrying Monica. I think she must realize that there can be nothing between you now. Barbara's cold tone struck a chord with the girl. I'll never accept her, and I'll curse you if you dare to bring her into the house. That girl will make our life unbearable and drive me to my grave before my time. If you don't care what happens to us, then marry her. But be warned, I won't help you, and you're still broke. You'll come to your mother, and I won't give my blessing. Live as you like. Monica, holding her breath, waited to see what the groom would say. He was silent. Then a heavy sigh was heard. Yes, Mom, I think you're right. We must weigh everything carefully. I'm glad you listened to my opinion. My darling boy, believe me, I have only your welfare in mind. It's a good thing Monica can't hear us. I must find the right words to explain everything and try not to hurt too much. Oh, son, there were tears in Barbara's voice. How thoughtful are you? Monica stood with her back against the cold wall, tears choking her. The talking had stopped. She opened the door. I'm back. The girl tried to give her voice her usual cheerfulness and pretended she hadn't heard anything. Thank you for waiting for me, but the treatments were so tiring. I'd like to rest. Excuse me, can you leave me alone? Yes, yes. Charles hurried off, pleased to be able to leave. Rest, sleep, is the best medicine for you now. I'll definitely come again when the doctors say it's okay. We'll walk with you in the park. The hospital has a great park. Get well, my dear, Barbara said in an indifferent tone. She looked triumphantly at her daughter-in-law who had failed. She had won the battle for her son. Charles never came to the hospital again. I want to look at myself in the mirror. It was a long time before the sick woman decided to ask the doctor, "Are you sure you're ready for this step? I'll have to do it someday anyway, so let it be now. Lisa, bring the mirror into the room and take off the bandages." Monica closed her eyes, gathering her strength, then resolutely opened them and saw her reflection. "Is that me?" Horrified, she asked. Tears welled up in her eyes. A stranger was staring back at her, her face disfigured by scars. One eye was half covered, pulled down by a scar. Another scar fixed the corner of her mouth with a downward slope. The face wasn't alive, as if someone had pulled an intimidating mask over it. Monica moaned helplessly, covering her face with her palms. She scratched at her skin with her fingers as if she wanted to peel it off. "How am I going to live with a face like this? I'm ugly." She threw her face on the pillow and sobbed, collashmally pounding her fists on the bed. "She's hysterical. Give her a sedative immediately." The doctor ordered, but he grabbed Monica, turned her around, and hugged her tightly, not letting her break free. She was sobbing and could not stop. The robe on the doctor's chest became wet from her tears. It's okay, girl," he pleaded with Monica. "You can handle it. You're strong. The main thing is that you're alive. Why should I live like this? Don't you see what's become of me? I'm disgusted with myself, and how will the people around me look at me? Charles? My poor Charles. He was right. I'm ugly. I can't be loved. He was right to leave me." A nurse came and took a sedative. After a few minutes, the girl quieted down, sobbed convulsively a few times, and collapsed in the man's arms. "Everything will be all right," said the doctor, putting the patient to bed. He ineptly stroked her head, saying, "Everything will get better. Plastic surgeries will do their job and fix her face." But it would never be the same again. As she fell asleep, Monica said, secretly from her mother, Charles found out when Monica was being discharged from the hospital and came to meet her. He was in a hurry, holding a huge bouquet of flowers. Where? When he entered the room, he saw a nurse rearranging the bed where the girl had been lying a short time ago. Monica was discharged. Without stopping what she was doing, the nurse said, "You're late. You should have come earlier." "What about you, fiancé?" "I didn't have time," Charles said, confused. He turned around and wanted to leave. "She left a letter for you there." He heard behind him. "A letter? Where is it?" The girl silently took an envelope out of her pocket and handed it to him. "Take it." The man handed her a bouquet. "This is for you, thank you." He walked out of the hospital into the street and sat down on a bench in the front garden. "Dear, beloved Charles, I had no idea that one day I would have to write these lines, but everything changed in an instant. Charles, I heard you talking." The man turned pale as he read those words. "And I don't want to be a burden to you. Your mother is right. We can't have anything in common now. I've changed since the accident, and I'll never be the same again. And it's not just my look. I didn't recognize you. I didn't want to believe that I was looking at you, my beloved beauty, my fiancé." The thought gave him a headache. I'd even thought I had made a mistake, and that I was looking at a strange woman. Not you, Monica, whom I adored. The accident had mutilated your lips, your nose, your cheeks. Everything I loved to kiss so much. This face was disgusting. I refused to believe I could see you. I shuddered to imagine having to touch what was once your face. I wouldn't have to deceive you by pretending to love you. You were right to leave without saying goodbye. You were stronger than I was, and it would have been hard for me to tell you all that, but I didn't have to explain." Charles stood up, hesitated for a moment, then tore the letter into small pieces and threw it in the trash. Then he squared his shoulders, took a deep breath, and walked away from the hospital. "Daughter," Betty urged me, "eat. You're starving yourself. You're shut up at home, like a snail in a shell. You can't torture yourself like that. You're burying yourself alive. Shall we go for a walk? You haven't left your room in so long." "I don't want anything, Mom." In a colorless voice, Monica answered. She was lying with her back turned to the wall, wrapped in a blanket. "Maybe I want to die. I can't even show my face on the street with this face, and you're asking me to go out. I should only be in horror movies now." "My dear," Mother secretly wiped away a tear. "You have to live for me. You have arms, legs, you still have a voice after all." "Why should I? I'll never be able to go on stage again anyway. I'd rather die than live with the thought that nobody needs me." "Don't say that, I need you. We'll figure something out. What about Charles? Why doesn't he call? We broke up." "Broke up how? Why? Did he leave you at a time like this?" "That bastard. I don't want to talk about it. He's gone. Leave me alone, please. You poor thing." Her mother sighed heavily and left the room. "No way." With these words, Betty sat down at the computer. "I'm not going to let you get depressed. There has to be a way out. I'll find a clinic that will help you get back to normal." "There you go." After a while, she exclaimed, "There is such a clinic, and here's the name of the doctor. Wow, quite young, and already so famous. Let's see some pictures of patients. He's a real talent. I'll send a picture to Monica and make an appointment." That's it. She pressed the key one last time, satisfied. Now we wait for the call. What if Monica refuses to go? Suddenly the woman was afraid. "She won't go anywhere. I'll persuade her to go. And if she doesn't, I'll make her go. She's not her own enemy." A couple of weeks later, an invitation for a consultation arrived. "Monica." Betty cautiously entered her daughter's room, standing at the window looking out at the street. "I have good news for you." The girl silently turned to her mother. "I've contacted a doctor at a clinic that specializes in complicated cases like yours. They replied today they're expecting you for an appointment in a month." "Why did you do that?" "I'm not going anywhere anyway. I'm ugly now. It's like a stigma. How can you imagine me riding on a train? Do you want me to be in full view of everyone and have people pointing fingers at me?" "Yeah, no one would let me go anywhere. I'm a freak. Don't talk about yourself like that. I won't let anyone insult you." "You can't protect me from that. Don't you get it yet? It's Mommy, if you can do it, then I agreed to go." A few days later, Monica tried on an elegant black mask made of a thin lace veil. It was like a second skin, hiding the scars but contouring the face. "There," Betty said, admiring her creation. "Now you can only be recognized by your figure, and it's beautiful." The girl stood in front of the mirror and looked at herself. She liked what she saw. "Thank you, Mom. I feel more confident now. I'm ready to go to the clinic." "Good girl." The woman sighed with relief. "There you will definitely help you. I read the reviews. The doctor works real miracles and will help you. I'm sure that we will not go in vain." A couple of days later, they already had tickets for the train. On the appointed day, they arrived in the city, checked into a hotel, and went to look for the clinic. "Good afternoon." Betty approached the receptionist's desk. "We have an appointment." "Yes." The nurse nodded affirmatively after looking at the computer. "Come into the office. The doctor is waiting for you." Monica, shy, entered the office. "Hello." The doctor smiled at her. "Come in and take off your mask, please. What a great idea to protect yourself from prying eyes. I'll have to adopt it. It was my mom's idea. The girl was embarrassed. The man was handsome, with strong but surprisingly soft hands. Did you come by yourself? Asked the doctor, scrutinizing her face, touching the scars. He flipped through her medical history, shook his head concernedly. No, with my mom. She's waiting in the hallway. That's good. The doctor looked at the patient thoughtfully. Let's call Mom. I understand that she will have to pay for the operation. I don't want to hide anything from you. He spoke as the two women sat down across from him. The case is really complicated. Of course, your surgeon has tried and carefully entered the cuts, but they are deep in some places, so the scars are rough. What should we do? We'd agree to anything, just to restore the face. Monica is a singer. It is very important for her to have a beautiful appearance. Of course, medicine can do a lot of things now, but the treatment is long. It will take more than one operation, and all of them are paid because we are a commercial organization. How much money are we talking about? The man thought, wrote a few lines on a paper and handed it to Betty. She turned pale. Is this the total amount for the treatment? No, the cost of one operation. Your daughter's injuries are too extensive. In fact, we'll have to reshape her face to get her back to her former appearance. It's not an easy task, and it has to be done quickly before the scarring fades. If you agree, we'll make a contract and start the treatment right away. We'll have to think about it. Betty looked at her daughter, desperation in her eyes. We didn't expect to need this kind of money. Think about it. The doctor agreed. You have the phone number, and when you're ready, contact us, but I'd advise you not to take too long. Loss of time will worsen the results of treatment. The women left the clinic upset. We'll never raise that much money. Monica said, especially now that you're working alone. We have to think of something. The mother realized that the money was too much for the family. There are some funds. You could apply to them. I'll find out. We'll put a call out on the internet. Ask friends, acquaintances. There are many kind people in the world. They will help our grief. We must pull ourselves together. Let's not give in to despair. Mommy. The girl hugged her mother, then pulled away from her and said firmly, I love you very much, but let's face it. No one will give us such money, and we cannot collect it ourselves until the end of the century. We shouldn't cling to our illusions. What do? We can't give up. There's no water under the stone. Live, Monica answered simply. If I didn't die in that accident, then we'll live. Now that I have this mask, I'll try to find a job. Everything will be fine. Let's go to the hotel. We'll go home tomorrow. Home and walls help. Surrounded by friends and acquaintances, it'll be easier. It'll never be easier for me now. You go ahead. I want to walk around a bit. See what sights there are around here. I need some time alone. I'm sorry, it's been a long day. Yeah, I understand. Don't stay too long. It's a strange city. You don't know what's going on. Okay, Mommy, don't worry. Monica walked through the city with interest, looking at the houses, the old buildings, the churches. Amazing, she thought, looking around. How the architect of the city was able to link the old and the new city, and no one is bothering anyone. What is this? The girl stopped and listened. Was it just me, or is someone really playing? She walked toward the sound. From the open door of an unremarkable cafe, a familiar tune was playing. Monica smiled, her favorite music, and how great the musician was playing. The girl entered the cafe at this hour. There were almost no visitors. As mesmerized, she sat down near the bar. Will you order something? Looking at her mask with interest, the bartender asked. "A glass of juice, please," the girl asked, keeping her eyes on the musician who was playing without looking at the keys. His thin fingers softly touched the keys, fluttering lightly, subtly over them. The melody faded, and the man put his hands on his knees, continuing to listen to the fading sounds. Finally, he stood up and took a seat at the bar as well. His blue eyes, framed by thick, long lashes, stared at her unblinkingly. "Why are you looking at me like that?" The girl flared under his gaze. "Didn't anyone ever tell you that it's unseemly to stare at a stranger?" "I'm sorry." The man was embarrassed and looked away. They were staring at the same point without blinking. "I didn't mean to offend you. Don't think anything bad. I assure you, I had no intention of insulting you." "He's blind." Leaning toward her, the bartender whispered, "I'm sorry." Monica blushed. I didn't know. I'm very embarrassed that I jumped on you. I should be the one apologizing to you. I scared you. I usually stay away from visitors, but you give me such warmth." He was quiet for a moment. "What's your name?" "Monica." "I'm Sebastian. I'm very pleased to meet you." He held out his hand, and the girl took it. "You have thin fingers and your hand is so delicate. You played very beautifully." She took her hand away gently. There was a look of distress on his face. "I came here because I heard the music from afar. Did you like it?" The man cheered up. "I like to play here. The owner spared no expense and bought a good instrument. It's a pity that there are not so many real music lovers among the visitors. Do you like music?" "Yes, I do." Monica smiled at the memory. "I used to sing in a cafe like this one." "Do you sing?" Sebastian perked up. "How stupid am I? I should have known you had a singing voice. Come on, I want to hear you sing now." He walked confidently toward the instrument. "Oh, I'm embarrassed." The girl protested confusedly. "You don't know my repertoire. How will you play along with me? You can't see the notes?" "I'm sorry, I've offended you again." "Not at all." Sebastian laughed. "You apologize too often. I am used to my position and do not take offense if someone accidentally, awkwardly hurt me. What will you perform?" "I don't know. I'm really embarrassed. I'm embarrassed. It's embarrassing to hide my talent. You and I, God gave us the ability to play and sing for people. We have no right to hide it." Sebastian sat down at his instrument and ran across the keys. "Start singing. I can pick up the melody." Monica picked up the first notes. She got carried away and didn't notice that the cafe was already full of people. Some of them were even standing, as there were no free tables. The girl looked only at the pianist, reacted to all the changes in his face, and his face spoke more than his eyes. When she sang the third song, the hall exploded with applause. "Thank you." Happy, Monica looked around at the audience. She had never been received like this before. "More," the audience chanted. "Sing more. Good evening." An imposing older man approached the girl. "Your marvelous voice has attracted an unprecedented number of visitors to the cafe. I'm the director of this establishment. I won't go around and around. I'm offering you a job. I'll pay you well. Take it. You have a great duet with Sebastian. You're both very talented. It's a pleasure to have my cafe as a meeting place for you." "Oh, that's impossible." Monica was confused. "I didn't even think about it." "Why not?" "I'll pay well. We don't have any cafes with live music in the city. We'll be the first. We'll make a lot of money. I'm sure no one will offer you more than me. The thing is, I live in another city. I've already got tickets in my pocket, and I'm not likely to ever come back here. Do you have a family?" "No, I live with my mom." Right now, she's looking forward to having me back. A prestigious job you'd hate to lose. I lost it in a car accident. So what's there to think about? The man looked triumphantly at the girl. You have nothing to lose, and here you have already found admirers of your talent and a job. But me, I can only perform in disguise. No one will reproach you for that. On the contrary, your unusual appearance gives your image a certain mystery and gives one more reason to come to us to look at you. But first of all, people will go for your voice. I've never heard such a thing. I need to consult with my mom. We're just passing through your town. Think about it, but not for long. I'll see you tomorrow night to sign a cooperation agreement. Monica, say yes. Sebastian stood up from behind his instrument. We'll make a great team. I just met a worthy partner, and I don't want to lose you immediately. The man found her hand and squeezed it. I can't give you an answer right away. I have obligations to my mom. Guiltily, said the girl. Promise me you'll think carefully. The girl warmly said goodbye to her new acquaintance and hurried to the hotel. Daughter, at last. I've been worried sick. Betty met her daughter right at the threshold, as if she was standing at the door, waiting for her to enter the room. Where have you been so long? I thought you were lost or something. Mommy. Monica hugged her mother and spun her around. Do you have no idea what has happened to me in these few hours? I'm staying here. What? What do you mean you're staying here? No, I don't want to hear anything. The woman protested. We're leaving here tomorrow. There's nothing to keep us here. I'm not going anywhere. I've been offered a job. What kind of job? I'll sing in a cafe. But you can sing in our town. Why stay here? There are strangers around. That's what I wanted to tell you. I met a man. Yeah, when did you meet him? Now, Mom, he plays so well you can hear it. He's so handsome, so kind, so gentle. I can't believe it. When did you see all these qualities in him? Sometimes it only takes a minute to realize that he's the one for you. Now I know for sure that love at first sight is real. He's like that. She hugged her mother. I'll introduce you to him. Sebastian is a wonderful person, staying in a strange city among strangers. The mother got out of her daughter's embrace. That's not what you're doing. Mommy, I'm an adult, and I can already manage my own life. I have nothing to lose. I was abandoned by the man I love, fired from my old job. I have nothing to hold me back. And here in this city, I can start from scratch. What about me? There were tears in Betty's eyes. You haven't thought at all about what's going to happen to me. You don't need me anymore. No, of course I do. Sweet, dear Mommy, I'm so grateful for your support. I promise I'll come as soon as I have any free moment and you'll come to me. I will never stop loving you, Mommy. You've done so much for me. Her daughter hugged her. But now I want to take care of you myself. This is my chance to try to be happy. And this man you speak of, how did he feel about your looks? Mom, Monica confessed. He's blind. He doesn't see me. And to everyone else my face is hidden under the mask you sewed. No one here knows of my misfortune. They are only interested in my voice. You should see the way I've been received. I feel needed again. Well, my dear daughter, you really have a right to your life. I won't hold you back. What's most important to a mother is that her child be happy. Thank you, Mommy. You must have really found yourself. I haven't seen the sparkle in your eyes in a long time. It's the selfishness of parenthood and the desire to protect my child from adversity. Mommy, you're the only reason I'm alive. You're the best mom in the world. The next day, Monica saw her mother off and went to the store. She had to find a concert dress. This dress suits you very well. The sales clerk looked at her with admiration. It fits you perfectly. It emphasizes your figure. I also need shoes. High-heeled shoes came right away. Let me offer you this pearl necklace. It will bring a touch of freshness to your dark color scheme. Thank you. Critically examining herself in the mirror, the girl said, I like it. The only thing missing is gloves. She showed her scarred hands. The sales clerk looked at them fearfully and pulled out long lace gloves. You'll be irresistible in this outfit. She remarked. Back at the inn, Monica changed her clothes, styling her thick, dark hair. She stood for a moment, critically assessing herself in the mirror. Now I'm a real artist. The girl smiled at her reflection. I thought life was over after the accident. I condemned myself, but all is not lost. Sebastian was playing something, sitting at the piano, but as soon as the girl entered the cafe, he immediately raised his head. Monica? He rejoiced. You haven't left. How did you know that I entered? She wondered. I felt your presence. So you're staying? Yes, I've decided to stay. She walked over to him and stopped beside the instrument. I'm very glad. The man held out his hand. Monica shook it. Sebastian brought it to his lips and kissed it. Your hands smell minty. It's the cream. Monica was embarrassed. She was embarrassed by his blatant attention, though she enjoyed being near him. You know you can tell a lot about a person by their smell. What can you tell about me? The girl laughed. You are a calm, gentle person, absolutely not conflicted, and now mint helps you cope with depression, am I right? Right. Monica raised her eyebrows in surprise. How do you know all this? If a person loses a feeling, he immediately gains other possibilities. We'll come back to our conversation, but now let's not disappoint the visitors. They've been waiting for you to sing something for a long time. He picked up the first notes and Monica sang. Her voice sounded tentative at first, but then grew stronger. She didn't look at the audience, she looked at Sebastian, mesmerized by his playing. His face shone, the look in his sightless eyes mesmerizing. The girl felt his silent support. He listened to her voice, and his expression gradually changed. At first it was tense, he was worried about her. Then the tension subsided, and he calmed down, rejoicing in her success. Bravo! The visitors shouted. When the last sounds of the piano died down, they applauded and laughed. Someone handed flowers to the happy Monica, and she kept her eyes on her new acquaintance, a peaceful smile on his face. Monica, you have a real talent. Admired the cafe director. I'm lucky you stopped by. You should be on the big stage. I like chamber concerts. The girl smiled modestly. I don't seek publicity. I'm not asking. He whispered in her ear. Why are you in a mask? But people are lost in speculation, trying to find out your secret. Can I not explain anything? She asked. This subject is too painful for me. All right, but is there anything I can do for you? I'm staying at a hotel where I can get a place to stay. I have just the perfect place for you. The director was pleased. My sister rents out a room. I think I can make a deal with her. I'm sure she'll meet you and lower the price. You'll be comfortable there, especially since the house isn't far from the cafe. Oh, that would be wonderful. Thank you very much. Your workday is at an end. We'll go to the hotel now, and then I'll take you to the apartment, show you around, and help you get settled. Monica said a warm goodbye to Sebastian and went to pack her things. Daughter, Betty called her every night. I'm very worried. How are you doing alone? Are you being abused? And the apartment you're living in? I'm fine. The girl assured her mother, I like working here. People are helpful, so well received. At work, I forget about my problem. How are you feeling? You haven't eaten anything at home, only cried, and there are no friends or acquaintances there. Take care of yourself, my dear. I have music. Monica answered simply. I don't feel inferior anymore. My gigs are waiting. I like this life. I've accepted the fact that I'll have to wear a mask for the rest of my life. You know, there's an upside to that. No one can see my face, and I can observe everyone unobstructed. I'd assure you, it's fascinating. And how's your new acquaintance? Sebastian? Monica blushed. I think fate brought us together in this city, in this cafe. He and I are on the same wavelength, musically. We don't even need to talk. Everything becomes clear when he plays and I sing. Our hearts beat in unison. And yet I'm still a little uneasy. You don't know anything about him. You have nothing to worry about. Neither he nor I talk about our past. I guess it's not time yet. We're just good together. You don't think about Charles at all? No, I'm over that pain. And it's a good thing we broke up, because otherwise I never would have met Sebastian. He means a lot to me. After these conversations, Monica couldn't sleep for a long time. She lay in the dark and remembered the light, casual touch of Sebastian's hand, the warm smile he gave her when he sensed that she was upset about something. And yet she was desperate to know what had happened to Sebastian, what had caused him to go blind. Monica? Sebastian suggested to her one day when the customers had already left. Why don't we go for a walk? It's such a lovely evening. It's a shame to go home. I agree. I don't want to go back to my cramped room either. They walked in silence, each thinking about something else. Sebastian? A girl broke the silence. What did you do before? You wouldn't believe it. He grinned bitterly. An accountant. An accountant? The girl was amazed. But you play so well. I thought you had a conservatory behind you. When I was a kid, I went to an ordinary music school. I really liked playing the piano. Whenever I had a free minute, I'd sit down at the instrument and play from memory. You know, there are people who can type blindly without looking at the keyboard, and that's how I learned to play. I don't need notes. I have a good musical memory. If it weren't for that, I'd be long gone by now. The man was silent, as if realizing that he had spoken. His lips were tightly pressed together, and his cheekbones were set. Monica remained silent, afraid to break the moment of candor, and waiting for Sebastian to continue his confession, and she was not mistaken. I had a fiancé. He grinned bitterly. We dated for a long time, and then I decided to propose to her. I don't know what always stopped me from taking that step. Maybe a sixth sense? He grinned again. It warned you of trouble. She was very pretty. She liked attention from men, dressed flashy, bright, even provocative. I had to rescue her from her obsessive admirers. I'd even asked her to dress more modestly, but she laughed at me, saying that I am possessive, and she wants to stand out from the crowd, that she will still have time to play a modest woman mystery when there will be children. She wouldn't listen to anything, preferring to show everything that nature had bestowed on her. Did you love her very much? Madly, even with her antics. The wedding preparations were in full swing. We were both over the moon and looking forward to it. Why didn't I insist that night that she change her outfit? He stopped talking again. What happened? Monica asked. That night we left the restaurant, and some thugs followed us. My fiancée took the liberty of flirting with them, she always did. She liked to drive men crazy. She enjoyed feeling power over them. Wasn't your attention enough for her? She liked to tickle my nerves. He smiled wryly, said it made me more passionate. And what happened next? Random admirers decided they could invite her to continue the evening. I naturally tried to explain to them that they had misunderstood her behavior and she wasn't going anywhere with them. They were drunk, of course. Yes, a fight ensued. While I was dealing with two of them, the third one came up behind me and hit me on the head with something heavy. I woke up in the hospital in total darkness. The doctors were hopeful at first that my eyesight would return. I waited for a month, but alas, no miracle. The diagnosis was total blindness. What about your fiancée? Fiancée? She left me the day she heard the doctor's verdict. Disabled, she didn't need me anymore. I had to quit my job. I didn't know where to put myself. All the doors closed in front of me. They offered only low-paid positions. I did not accept. I needed money for rehabilitation and treatment. All my searches were in vain. And that's when you took the job at this cafe? Yes, I heard one of the customers playing a tune, sat down at the instrument and played. The owner offered me a job, so I took it. The pay is good, and sometimes the customers tip well. I like what I do. Sebastian and Monica stopped by a street lamp that lit their faces well. But lately, I've been flying instead of going to work. The man confessed, looking at the girl point blank, as he had when they first met. It even seemed to her that he could see her. I am happy that you once accidentally heard me play. I think I was playing especially for you, so that my music would lead you to me. He touched his hand to the mask, a look of bewilderment on his face. Sebastian carefully removed it. Don't. Monica protested. You won't like what's under the mask, but the man took her face in his hands and kissed her lightly, then ran his hand over her skin, felt the scars, and turned pale. I knew I would disgust you. Tears showed in the girl's eyes. One rolled down her mangled cheek. No. He ran his thumb gently over her skin, wiping away the tears. I don't know what happened to you. I can't see your face, but I can feel your soul. Remember I said that nature takes one thing from a man and gives him another. I fell in love with you like a boy the first minute I heard your voice, and then I realized that you are an amazingly delicate and vulnerable person, and as lonely as I am. Yes, I lost my sight, but in return I received a real gift from God to meet you, and now I can't imagine life without you. Do you believe me? Sebastian looked at her without pity, without fear. In his eyes there was only love. He pressed her to him and kissed her, and she reciprocated. Can you hear the music in my heart? Yes. Barely audible, Monica whispered. She was unusually excited by the kiss. It seemed to her that for a moment they were both lifted off the ground. So strong, so vivid was their mutual feeling. My heart is singing for you, only you will hear it. I couldn't even imagine that one could fall in love like this. Now there is something to live for. I'm happy, and I'm happy. They stood hugging each other for a long time. Monica hid her face on his chest, feeling protected. They felt good together. They had each other now. Son, Barbara announced joyfully. I've found you a bride. It's a great match. I've always dreamed of such a daughter-in-law. Mom, Charles wrinkled his nose. He was tired of the brides his mother offered him. I'm not getting married yet. Why not? Are you still hung up on that Monica? I thought you were done with your ugly fiancé? Don't start, Mom. The man wrinkled his nose. I've turned over a new leaf in my life. Good for you. Tomorrow Kelly has agreed to come and visit us. You'll see she'll be a wonderful wife to you. You'd be kind enough to be hospitable. I hope you'll listen to what I have to say. Take a good look at her. You know Mom never gives you bad advice. The next evening, a rich table was set in anticipation of the guest. Go open the door, Mother said when she heard the bell ring. Hello. On the threshold stood a gorgeous blonde with high, firm breasts. Blue eyes looked appraising, plump lips opened invitingly in anticipation of a kiss. "Hello!" A dumbfounded Charles backed away, letting the beauty into the apartment. "Kelly," Barbara sang, "we've been waiting for you. Come in, darling." Ignoring the oath, he had forgotten how to court women. "Have a seat at the table." "Charles," she looked sternly at her son, "pour us each a glass of wine. I suggest we drink to the meeting." The evening flew by. The young woman was talkative and well-read. Charles kept his eyes on her. Only sometimes a shadow came over his face when the image of Monica involuntarily appeared in his memory. Kelly was the complete opposite of her. She had none of Monica's modesty, refinement, or malleability. He pondered, looking at the girl. "But she's so damn attractive and uninhibited, and I like that. Well, what do you say, son?" Cleaning up the table, Barbara asked, "I told you that she is a very nice girl, not like that bride of yours, who is not ashamed to go out with her. And she's beautiful, smart, and can hold a conversation. You couldn't find a better wife. Why don't you say something?" "I noticed right away that you had your eye on her." "I won't deny the obvious," Charles sighed. "I liked her." "Good." My mother rejoiced. "Don't delay, meet her again, and then propose. Don't hesitate. You're not a boy anymore. You are both people established, and there and soon have children." She sobbed. "Will I really live to see my grandchildren? Finally, my heart will calm down. You've made me happy, son. You've made me happy." 3 months later, Kelly was wearing a wedding ring on her ring finger. Barbara loved her daughter-in-law. "Look at the cream Kelly gave me, son," she bragged. Her face was as soft as a baby's. "Charles," she was indignant after a while, "Kelly complains that you don't want to go on vacation with her, says you don't pay any attention to her." "I'd love to go," sarcastically responded to the mother's remark the man. "If your Kelly would learn to save a little, and then I do not have time to earn money, and she lets them go for all sorts of nonsense. You two go together. I see you two are getting along well." "I'm grateful. Your wife makes your home cozy, and you're always dissatisfied with her. Look how nice your place is now. She's the only thing that makes you look like a decent man. What do you miss? She complained about me." "No, really? I can see how you feel about her. Don't you realize your coldness hurts your wife? Don't interfere in our relationship." The man lost his temper. "We'll work it out ourselves. Son, how do you talk to your mother?" "I'm sorry, Mom, but you're always telling me how to live my life. I'm not a little boy anymore. This is my family and my wife. We'll work out our own problems." Frustrated, Charles came home. "What's your problem?" He went off on his wife. "I work like an ox so that you can visit beauty salons and expensive clothes stores, and you complain to your mother that I don't pay enough attention to you. Why don't you tell her why I'm hardly ever home?" "Why do you resent me, dear?" Kelly spoke peacefully, kissing her husband. He pushed her away. "You? How rude are you? Nothing terrible happened, just to talk about the fact that you are rarely at home. Think, offended. You don't know why I've been missing work. Because I don't have time to rest. I have to work and work to pay your endless bills, your massages, your manicures. Damn them all. You didn't spare any money for me." The woman was ready to use her main weapon, tears. "When I persuaded you to marry you, said you loved you, gave you gifts, and swore fidelity. Yes, I thought I was in love with you. But now I realize I made a big mistake. I rushed into marriage so my mom wouldn't bother me anymore. It's her choice. You two are both bugging me. You've drunk all my blood. You can't get enough." "Oh, is that how you talk?" Kelly cried. "So get out of the house. I'd rather sleep at work than live under the same roof with a hysteric like you." "Go away," she shouted after him. "Nobody's going to cry." Charles ran out of the house, slamming the door in his heart. He walked through town thinking, "Why did I listen to my mother? I don't love my wife. I'm a miserable man. At least I can be honest with myself. I still love Monica. I can't forget her. Where is she now? Since that memorable day when I lost sight of her, so much water has passed. Her phone is silent. What about her? How's she doing? I'm still tormented by the guilt I feel for her." He walked on, unable to see anyone around him. Suddenly, Charles stopped, listened. What the hell? A long-forgotten warm feeling stirred in his heart, remembering something dear, native. Who is it singing? The man rushed to the sound of the marvelous voice, afraid that now the song would fall silent and he would not be able to find the singer. Charles literally ran into the cafe and froze. Monica was standing at the microphone. Her face was hidden by a mask, but her voice, her figure, he would have recognized her even in the crowd. The patrons applauded as the last sounds of music died down. "Monica." Charles stepped toward his former lover. "I was looking for you, but I didn't expect to find you here. Your voice brought me here." "Hello, Charles." The woman spoke calmly. "Why were you looking for me? I missed you. Have you forgotten me? Even if I wanted to forget, I couldn't." She grinned. "My face reminds me of you every morning and evening. The rest of the time, I hide behind a mask and am quite content with my life. Why did you come here? You have the right to reproach me. I admit I was mean to you then, but it's never too late to make things right. I want you to come back to me. I've changed, but I still love you. Please, I'm sorry. Can we start over? It's too late. I've changed too. I've learned to see the falseness in people. Have you forgotten how good we were together? I can't live without you. Can't live without you so much that you got married." She nodded at her wedding ring. "This marriage means nothing to me." He hurriedly took off the ring and carefully put it in his pocket. "I still remember our meetings, our kisses. I don't love Kelly, but I love my husband, and I'm not going to change a thing. If you'd come back when I needed you most, when I didn't want to live, then we could have been happy again, but you chickened out, hid under your mom's skirt. Yes, I made a cruel mistake, I admit it, but you have to understand me. I was scared. Forgive me, I was a fool. I didn't realize what a treasure I'd lost. Only now I realize how much you meant to me. You have the right to hate me, I'll bear it. Just don't send me away. I forgave you long ago." Monica looked at her former lover with pity. "And I don't hate you. Strangely enough, I'm even grateful because the ordeal has made me strong. Then give me a chance, please. We can try to be happy." "I am already happy," answered Monica. "I have a caring husband, and we are expecting a child." Charles only now noticed the rounded belly of his former lover. He stood silently and watched as Monica returned to the microphone. A melody played, and the woman sang. The man saw how lovingly she looked at the musician and realized that he had lost her forever. Charles turned around and walked down the street. He was returning to his home, and a song about love, loyalty, and happiness gained was singing after him.